The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the mahogany conference table as Victor Reeves held up the document that would change everything. "Translate this." He laughed, his voice dripping with mockery. "And my daily salary is yours, $27,400. The room erupted in laughter, but Lucia Vega stood frozen, her cleaning cloth trembling in her hand. That exact amount, it was the price of her mother's life, down to the last penny. What the billionaire didn't know was that the invisible maid polishing his table could read every word of that Mandarin contract. Welcome to a story of hidden brilliance and sweet revenge. Comment your city below to see how far this tale travels. The morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Reeves Technologies' 42nd floor painting. Golden streaks across the imported Italian marble. Lucia Vega moved through the executive conference room like a ghost, her practiced hands wiping away invisible specks of dust from surfaces that already gleamed. She had learned long ago that true invisibility wasn't about hiding, it was about being so perfectly predictable that people's eyes simply slid past you. "More coffee, Mr. Reeves?" she asked softly, though she already knew the answer. "3 sugars, no cream." Ethiopian blend temperature precisely at 140 degrees. She'd been serving him the same cup for 3 years, and he'd never once looked her in the eye. Victor Reeves didn't acknowledge her presence, his attention fixed on the leather portfolio before him. At 38, he was everything the business magazines loved, to feature sharp jawline, premature silver, threading through dark hair that suggested wisdom rather than age. Custom Armani suits that cost more than most people's cars. He'd built Reeves Technologies from a garage startup to a $3 billion empire in just 12 years, and he wore his success like armor. "Listen up, everyone," he announced, his voice cutting through the morning chatter as executives filed into the room. "We have a situation." Derek Willis was the first to lean forward, his eagerness so palpable it practically vibrated off him. Everything about Derek screamed ambition, from his too-perfect smile to the way he positioned himself, always just slightly closer to Victor than anyone else dared. At 29, he was the youngest senior executive in the company, a fact he mentioned at least once in every conversation. "What kind of situation, Victor?" Derek asked, using the CEO's first name with practiced casualness that fooled no one. Victor lifted the document, its pages covered in neat rows of Chinese characters. "Hang Tech wants to partner with us. Exclusive manufacturing rights for our new AI chip series. The deal could be worth $200 million in the first year alone." A collective intake of breath swept through the room. $200 million. Even for Reeves Technologies, that was substantial. "There's just one small problem." Victor continued, his lips curving into that particular smile that Lucia had learned meant someone was about to be humiliated. "They sent the entire proposal in Mandarin, 30 pages of technical specifications, legal terms, and partnership conditions, and they want our response by end of business today." "Can't we use translation software?" suggested Patricia Kumar, the head of legal, her fingers already reaching for her tablet. Victor's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "For a contract this important? Are you serious, Patricia? We need perfect accuracy. Every technical term, every legal nuance. One mistranslation could cost us millions." "I'll handle it," Derek said immediately. "I studied Mandarin in college. Give me a few hours." "You studied Mandarin for 2 semesters 8 years ago," Victor interrupted. "Can you really stake $200 million on that?" Derek's face flushed, but before he could respond, Victor stood up, the document held high like a trophy. "You know what? Let's make this interesting." His eyes swept the room, pausing on each face with calculated drama. "Anyone in this building, anyone at all who can accurately translate this document, gets my daily salary. 1 day's pay transferred immediately." "How much is that exactly?" someone whispered from the back. Victor's smile widened. $27,400. The number hung in the air like a physical presence. Lucia's hand stilled on the coffee pot. $27,400. the exact amount she needed for her mother's treatment down to the dollar. The coincidence was so perfect, it felt like fate twisting a knife in her ribs. "That's insane," Derek muttered, but his eyes glittered with interest. "Is it?" Victor set the document on the table with deliberate ceremony. "That's what I make in a single day. Surely someone in this company of 3,000 employees can read Chinese. We hire the best and brightest, don't we?" Patricia cleared her throat. "Victor, shouldn't we just hire a professional translator? The risk?" "The professional translators are all booked." Victor cut her off. "I've already checked. Every firm in the city is handling year-end international contracts. We could fly someone in from New York, but they wouldn't arrive until tomorrow, and Hang Tech specifically stated today's deadline is non-negotiable." "It's a test," said Marcus Chen from Strategic Development, his analytical mind already working through the angles. "They want to see how resourceful we are, how we handle pressure." "Exactly," Victor agreed. "So who's going to step up $27,000 for maybe 6 hours of work? That's more than most people make in half a year." The executives exchanged glances, a mixture of greed and fear playing across their faces. Lucia watched them from her position by the coffee station, invisible as always, her heart hammering against her ribs. She could read every character on those pages. Had been able to since she was 7 years old, when her father would spread similar documents across their kitchen table, teaching her the elegant strokes while her mother cooked dinner in their small apartment. "I'll give it a shot," Derek announced, reaching for the document. Victor pulled it back. "Anyone can try, but there's a catch. You get one submission. If it's wrong, you're out. We can't afford multiple interpretations confusing the situation." And his smile turned predatory. "If you fail, I want it in writing that you're acknowledging your limitations. Call it a humility clause." "That seems unnecessary," Patricia protested. "Success requires accountability," Victor replied smoothly. "If someone's going to claim they can handle a $200 million translation, they better be certain." Lucia forced herself to continue her routine, wiping down surfaces that didn't need cleaning, refilling water glasses that were barely touched. But her mind was racing. $27,400. Her mother's chemotherapy. The mortgage payment. The medical bills that arrived like clockwork, each one a reminder of how quickly a middle-class life could crumble into desperation. 3 years ago, they'd been comfortable. Her father, David Chen, though he'd westernized his name from Chen Wei for business, had been a respected technical translator, one of the best in the city. Her mother, Maria, had run a small alterations shop, her skilled hands transforming fabric with the same precision surgeons used on flesh. Lucia herself had just graduated from Columbia with a degree in international business, her future bright with possibility. Then came the diagnosis. Pancreatic cancer stage 3. Her father had lasted 8 months each day, watching him fade, a lesson in helplessness. The medical bills had devoured their savings first, then the retirement funds, then the equity in the house. When he died, he left them with nothing but debt and memories. 6 months later, her mother's headaches started. Brain tumor. Operable, the doctor said, but expensive. So expensive that even with insurance, the copays and deductibles and out-of-network specialist would cost exactly $27,400. The surgery was scheduled for next week. Without it, the doctors gave her mother 3 months, maybe 4. Lucia had tried everything. Bank loans were rejected, too much existing medical debt. Credit cards were maxed from her father's treatment. She'd sold everything valuable they owned, down to her grandmother's jade jewelry. She'd taken this cleaning job at Reeves Technologies because it paid slightly better than others, included health insurance, and sometimes executives left cash tips during holiday parties. 3 years of invisibility. 3 years of being nothing more than furniture that moved background noise in important conversations. 3 years of hiding her education, her languages, her capabilities, because the moment they knew what she could do, they'd wonder why she was cleaning their offices. And that curiosity would lead to questions, and questions would lead to the truth, that Lucia Chen, Columbia graduate multilingual analyst, was broke, desperate, vulnerable. "Anyone?" Victor asked again, scanning the room. "No takers. What about you, Marcus? You're always bragging about your international experience." Marcus shook his head. "I speak Cantonese, not Mandarin, and certainly not at the level needed for technical translation." Sarah Williams from HR held up her hands. "I can order from a Chinese menu. That's about it." Victor's gaze swept the room once more, and for a brief, terrifying moment, it landed on Lucia. She kept her expression blank, her hands steady as she aligned the coffee cups on the service tray. His eyes moved on without recognition. "Pathetic," he declared. "A $3 billion technology company, and we can't find a single person who speaks the most common language on Earth." "To be fair," Patricia said carefully, "technical Mandarin is extremely specialized. It's not just about speaking the language, excuses." Victor cut her off. "This is exactly the kind of provincial thinking that holds American companies back. The Chinese are eating our lunch in manufacturing, and we can't even read their proposals." Derek stood up suddenly. "Give me 2 hours. I'll use my college Mandarin and cross-reference with technical dictionaries. It won't be perfect, but it'll be enough to respond. And if you're wrong, if you mistranslate a critical term and we lose the deal." Derek's jaw tightened. "I'll take responsibility." Will you really?" Victor pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. "I'm documenting this. Derek Willis is attempting the translation. If he fails, it's on record." He looked up, his eyes scanning the room again. "Anyone else want to try? The offer stands. $27,400. Lucia's throat constricted. She could do it. Could walk over right now, pick up that document and translate it perfectly. Her father had specialized in exactly these types of contracts, and he'd taught her everything. The technical terms, the legal phrases, the subtle differences in meaning that could turn a partnership into a trap. But she couldn't. Not like this. Not in front of everyone. The questions would be immediate and merciless. Why was a maid fluent in technical Mandarin? What was her real background? Why was she hiding her abilities? And Derek, she'd seen what Derek did to threats to his position. The last executive who'd challenged him had been systematically destroyed, their reputation shredded through whispered rumors and strategic sabotage until they'd resigned in disgrace. "I need the conference room," Derek announced. "Alone, no distractions." "It's all yours," Victor said, gesturing for everyone to leave. "You have until 5 p.m. That gives you 7 hours. As the executives filed out, Lucia began collecting the coffee cups, her movements automatic. Derek remained behind, already pulling out his laptop, his face set with determination. "You," he said suddenly, and Lucia realized he was talking to her. "What's your name?" "Lucia," she replied quietly, not meeting his eyes. "Lucia, I need absolute silence. No cleaning, no interruptions. Understood?" "Yes, Mr. Willis." "And bring me coffee every hour. Black, no sugar." "Of course." She left the room, her mind churning. In the service corridor, she leaned against the wall, pulling out her phone. 17 missed calls from the hospital. Her hands shook as she called back. "Miss Vega, this is Dr. Patterson. We need to discuss your mother's surgery schedule." "Is everything okay?" "The surgery is still set for next week, but we need the payment by Monday, the full amount. I'm sorry, but the hospital board has become very strict about prepayment for elective surgeries." "It's not elective," Lucia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Without it, she'll die." "I understand, and I'm sympathetic truly, but my hands are tied. $27,400 by Monday, or we'll have to postpone. And if we postpone, the tumor is growing rapidly. Every week matters." Lucia closed her eyes. "I'll have it." "I hope so, Miss Vega. Your mother is a lovely woman. She speaks very highly of you." After hanging up, Lucia stood in the corridor for a long moment, her decision crystallizing. She couldn't translate the document openly, but perhaps... She went to the supply closet, where she kept her personal items during shifts. Hidden in her bag, wrapped in soft cloth, was her father's jade pen. It had been his most prized possession, a gift from his own father used to sign his most important translations. She'd been planning to sell it. A dealer had offered $3,000, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. It was the last piece of him she had left. She held it now, feeling its familiar weight. "What would you do, Papa?" she whispered. But she already knew. Her father had been a proud man, but not too proud to do whatever it took to protect his family. "Survival first," he used to say. "Dignity is a luxury for those who aren't desperate." An hour later, she brought Derek his coffee. He was hunched over his laptop, multiple browser tabs open, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "How's it going?" she asked, setting the cup down carefully. He didn't look up. "Fine, it's fine." But she could see his screen could read the characters he was attempting to translate. He was getting perhaps half of them right, and his interpretation of the technical terms was disastrously wrong. Where the document discussed integrated circuit optimization, he had written unified circle improvement. Where it mentioned proprietary heat dissipation technology, he had translated it as private warmth spreading technique. It would have been funny if it weren't so dangerous. If Reeves Technologies responded based on Derek's translation, they wouldn't just lose the deal, they'd be laughingstocks. The Chinese executives would share the story for years, how the great Victor Reeves couldn't even find someone to properly translate their proposal. She left the room, but her mind was already working. There had to be a way. Some method to get the correct translation to Victor without revealing herself. She thought about leaving an anonymous note, but that would raise even more questions. She considered approaching Patricia privately, but Patricia was notorious for being unable to keep secrets. By lunch, an idea had formed. It was risky, perhaps foolish, but it might work. The executive floor had a particular rhythm. From noon to 1, most of the staff went to lunch either in the company cafeteria or at the expensive restaurants nearby. The floor became quiet, almost abandoned. Security was minimal after all. Who would break into a floor full of offices when the real valuable technology was in the labs? 20 floors below, Lucia waited until 12:15, then made her way to Victor's office. As expected, he was at lunch with potential investors. She'd heard him discussing it that morning. His assistant was gone too, probably grabbing a salad from the place across the street. The document was on his desk, copies spread out for easy reference. Lucia pulled on cleaning gloves, a habit that would also prevent fingerprints, and picked up the original. Her father had taught her to read quickly, scanning for key terms and context. The document was complex, but not unusually so. Hangtech was proposing a 5-year exclusive manufacturing agreement for Reeves Technologies' new AI processing chip. They would handle all Asian production and distribution in exchange for a 30% discount on licensing fees. But there were subtleties Derek would miss. The payment terms, for instance, required funds to be held in escrow in a Chinese bank, subject to Chinese financial regulations. The intellectual property clauses contained loopholes that would allow Hangtech to develop derivative technologies that could compete with Reeves's products. Most critically, there was a clause about workforce restructuring that would require Reeves Technologies to lay off 15% of their manufacturing staff and replace them with Hangtech's people. Lucia pulled out a notepad from the cleaning cart. She always carried one to note supplies that needed restocking. In small, neat handwriting, she began translating key sections. Not the entire document, that would be too obvious, but the critical parts Derek would get wrong. She wrote quickly, her father's training flowing through her fingers. Section 3.2 actually states, intellectual property derived from joint development may be independently commercialized by Hangtech in markets where Reeves Technologies does not have an established presence. This is much broader than it appears. Section 7.8 requires employee reduction of 15% in manufacturing, not efficiency improvements, as the literal translation suggests. The payment terms in Section 9 subject all funds to Chinese banking regulations, which could freeze assets during political tensions. She filled 3 pages with corrections and clarifications, each one precisely referenced to specific sections. At the bottom, she hesitated, then wrote, "The deal is valuable, but needs modification. Suggest countering with 20% discount instead of 30%. Removing the workforce restructuring clause and requiring arbitration in Singapore rather than Beijing." She signed it simply, "A friend." She placed the notes in an envelope from Victor's desk, sealed it, and wrote on the outside, "Critical corrections to Hang Tech translation. Please review before responding." She left it prominently on his chair, where he couldn't miss it, then quickly restored everything else exactly as it had been. The entire operation took less than 10 minutes. As she was leaving, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Her heart hammering, she grabbed a duster from her cart and began cleaning the bookshelf her back to the door. "Oh, it's you," said Victoria Reeves, Victor's sister, and the company's CFO. Where Victor was all sharp edges and calculated charm, Victoria was softer though no less intelligent. She actually looked at the cleaning staff when she passed them in the halls, sometimes even remembering names. "Just finishing up, Ms. Reeves," Lucia said, keeping her voice steady. Victoria glanced around the office, her eyes sharp. "My brother leave anything interesting lying around?" "I wouldn't know, ma'am. I just clean." Victoria studied her for a moment, and Lucia had the uncomfortable feeling that those intelligent eyes saw more than she let on. Then Victoria smiled. "Of course. Carry on." After she left, Lucia quickly finished and retreated to the service areas. Her heart didn't stop racing for 20 minutes. At 2 o'clock, she brought Derek another coffee. He looked worse, hair disheveled, tie loosened, laptop surrounded by crumpled papers covered in crossed-out attempts. "Making progress?" she asked politely. "It's harder than I thought," he admitted, then seemed to catch himself. "But I'm getting there. Another few hours and I'll have it." She glanced at his screen. He'd managed maybe 8 pages, and the errors were getting worse, not better. He was clearly using online translation tools, now trying to piece together meanings from multiple sources. "Mr. Willis," she said carefully, "maybe you should ask for help. I heard Mr. Chen from Strategic Development speak some Chinese." "I don't need help," Derek snapped. "Especially not from Marcus. Just leave the coffee and go." She did, but not before noticing that he'd translated subsidiary rights as child company permissions, a mistake that would make Reeves Technologies look like amateurs. At 3 o'clock, Victor returned from lunch. Lucia, mopping the hallway outside his office, heard his sudden exclamation. "What the hell is this?" Through the partially open door, she saw him holding the envelope, his expression unreadable. He opened it, scanning the contents quickly. His face went through a series of changes, surprise, suspicion, then intense interest. He picked up his phone. "Patricia, my office, now." Patricia arrived within minutes. "What's wrong?" "Look at this." He showed her the notes. Someone left corrections to the Hang Tech translation, anonymous. Patricia frowned as she read. "These are incredibly detailed, and if they're accurate, Derek's translation is going to be a disaster. Get me someone who can verify these, now." "Victor, all the translators are—" "I don't care. Find someone. Call universities, call the UN, call whoever you have to. I need to know if this is real." As Patricia hurried out, Lucia moved away, continuing her cleaning routine. Her anonymous notes would at least prevent the worst mistakes, but they wouldn't be enough. Victor needed a complete, accurate translation, not just corrections. By 4 o'clock, the tension on the executive floor was palpable. Derek had emerged from the conference room twice, both times looking increasingly frantic. Word had somehow spread through the company about the translation challenge and the reward. Lucia overheard two junior executives discussing whether they should attempt it with Google Translate. 27 grand, one of them said. Even if I got it half right. You'd be humiliated, the other replied. And Victor would probably fire you for wasting his time. At 4:30, Patricia returned to Victor's office with a young Asian man wearing a University of Chicago sweatshirt. "This is Tommy Liu," she said. "Doctoral student in linguistics. He can verify the notes." Lucia, replacing paper towels in the nearby restroom, left the door cracked so she could hear. Tommy's voice was impressed. "Whoever wrote these knows their stuff. Not just the language, but the business implications. This is professional level work." So the corrections are accurate. More than accurate. They're insightful. Like this note about the arbitration clause, most people wouldn't catch that Singapore arbitration versus Beijing arbitration could mean the difference between fair resolution and home court advantage for Hang Tech. "Who could have written this?" Victor demanded. "Someone with serious expertise," Tommy replied. "This isn't just translation, it's analysis. Whoever did this understands both languages at a native level and has deep knowledge of international business law." "But who? And why anonymously?" Patricia spoke up. "Maybe someone who's afraid of Derek. He's been pretty aggressive about eliminating competition. Remember what happened to Jennifer from marketing when she challenged him?" Victor was quiet for a moment. "Derek said he'd have the translation ready by 5. That's 20 minutes. You're not really going to let him submit it, are you?" Patricia asked. "If these corrections are right, his translation could ruin the deal. I want to see how wrong he is. And more importantly, I want to know who our mysterious translator is." At exactly 5 o'clock, Derek entered Victor's office with a leather portfolio. Lucia was in the hallway, ostensibly cleaning the water fountain, but positioned where she could see and hear through the open door. "Finished?" Derek announced, though his confidence seemed forced. 30 pages fully translated. Victor took the document, flipping through it slowly. His expression grew darker with each page. "Derek," he said finally, his voice dangerously quiet. "Do you know what you've translated here? The Hang Tech proposal, manufacturing agreement licensing terms. You've translated thermal dissipation as heat scattering. You've rendered proprietary architecture as private building style. And my personal favorite, you've agreed to give them our children company permissions instead of subsidiary rights." Derek's face drained of color. The technical terms were challenging. Challenging. Victor stood up, the document crumpling in his fist. "This isn't just wrong, it's embarrassingly wrong. If I'd sent this to Hang Tech, we'd be the laughingstock of the industry." "How do you know it's wrong?" Derek demanded, desperation making him bold. "You don't speak Mandarin either." Victor threw the anonymous notes on the desk. "Because someone who actually knows what they're doing provided corrections. Someone who, unlike you, didn't let ego override competence." Derek picked up the notes, scanning them quickly. "Who wrote these? That's what I want to know." Victor's voice rose, carrying through the entire floor. "Someone in this building is fluent in technical Mandarin and chose to remain anonymous rather than claim $27,000. Why?" The question hung in the air. Lucia forced herself to keep cleaning, though her hands trembled slightly. "Maybe they're not an employee," Patricia suggested. "Could be a contractor, someone who's not eligible for the reward. Or someone who's afraid," Victoria said, appearing in the doorway. She'd obviously been listening. "Think about it, Victor. You've created a culture where showing up Derek means becoming his enemy. Maybe this person values their job security more than one day's windfall." Derek's face flushed. "That's ridiculous. I've never—" "Jennifer from marketing, Brad from development, Susan from accounting." Victoria listed the names calmly. "All challenged you in some way, all gone within 6 months. They left for better opportunities. After you made their lives miserable." Victoria finished. "Everyone knows it, Derek. You're talented, but you're also vindictive." Victor was studying the anonymous notes again. This handwriting. It's distinctive. Small, precise, almost artistic. Lucia's heart stopped. Her handwriting was one of the things her father had been most strict about. Clear writing shows clear thinking, he'd always said. I want security to review the footage, Victor said. Someone was in my office between noon and 3. The cameras were down for maintenance, Patricia said. It sent a memo yesterday. Victor's laugh was bitter. How convenient. Our mystery translator is either very lucky or very smart. What about the hang tech deal? Victoria asked. The deadline is in an hour. Victor sat back in his chair, fingers steepled. Derek's translation is useless. The anonymous notes are helpful but incomplete. We need the full document properly translated. I could try, Derek started. You're done. Victor cut him off. You've wasted enough time. What I need is our mystery translator to step forward. He stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the city. Double the reward. $55,000 for a complete, accurate translation. But they have to identify themselves. Lucia's breath caught. $55,000. More than enough for her mother's surgery and the first round of follow-up treatments. But stepping forward would mean everything would change. Her carefully maintained invisibility would shatter. Should I send out a company-wide email? Patricia asked. No. Victor said slowly, his mind obviously working. Our translator is here. On this floor. They knew about the document, knew when I'd be at lunch, knew the cameras were down. It's someone with access. His gaze swept the office, passing over Patricia Victoria Derek and through the open door to where Lucia stood with her cleaning supplies. Again, his eyes moved past her without recognition. Posted on the executive bulletin board, he said finally. $55,000. 1 hour. Full translation, but they must reveal themselves. As the others dispersed, Lucia retreated to the supply closet. She sat on an overturned bucket, her father's jade pen clutched in her hands. The choice before her was impossible. Reveal herself and save her mother, but lose the anonymity that protected her. Stay hidden and watch her mother die. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. The sunset is beautiful today, mija. Wish you could see it with me. Her mother always talked about sunsets now, as if each one might be her last. Lucia stood up, decision made. But as she reached for the door, she heard voices in the hallway. It has to be someone on the cleaning staff, Derek was saying. Who else would have access but stay anonymous? Don't be ridiculous, Patricia replied. The cleaning staff, really? Think about it. They're here all the time, they hear everything and they're invisible. The perfect cover. For someone who speaks fluent technical Mandarin. Come on, Derek. I'm telling you, check their backgrounds, especially the ones who were here during lunch. Lucia's blood ran cold. Derek was many things, but he wasn't stupid. If he started investigating the cleaning staff, it wouldn't take long to discover that Lucia Vega had a degree from Columbia, that her maiden name was Chen, that her father had been David Chen, one of the city's best technical translators before his death. She waited until their voices faded, then slipped out of the closet. But instead of going to Victor's office, she went to the conference room where Derek had been working. His laptop was still there, still logged in. A plan formed in her mind. It was devious, perhaps even cruel, but it would solve multiple problems at once. She sat down at Derek's laptop and opened a new document. Then, working quickly, she began typing the complete translation of the hang-tech proposal. Every technical term, perfect, every legal phrase precisely rendered. But she didn't sign it with her name. Instead, at the top she typed, "Translation by Derek Willis, corrected version." Then she added a note, "Mr. Reeves. I apologize for my earlier errors. I was nervous and rushed. I've spent the last hour carefully reviewing and correcting my work. This is the accurate translation. I'm submitting it via email to ensure it reaches you in time." Derek. She sent it to Victor's email from Derek's account, then cleared the browser history and returned the laptop to exactly how it had been. As she was leaving, she nearly ran into Derek himself in the hallway. "Watch where you're going," he snapped, then paused, studying her. "You're the one who's been bringing me coffee." "Yes, Mr. Willis." "You've been on this floor all day." "Yes, sir." His eyes narrowed. "What's your background? Where are you from?" "I'm from Queens," she said truthfully. "Born and raised." "But your family originally—" "My mother is from Mexico," she said, which was also true. She simply didn't mention her father. Derek seemed to consider this, then dismissed her with a wave. "Get back to work." She did, but she positioned herself where she could see Victor's office. At 5:45, she saw him suddenly sit up straight, staring at his computer screen. "Patricia," he called. "Derek. Everyone, get in here now." They assembled quickly. Derek, looking confused and worried. "Explain this," Victor said, turning his monitor toward Derek. "You sent me a complete translation. A perfect translation, according to our friend Tommy here, who I asked to stay." Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish. What?" "This email. From your account. 15 minutes ago." Derek lunged for the screen, reading quickly. "I didn't send this. I didn't write this. It's from your laptop, your account with your name on it. Someone else did this. Someone's setting me up." Victor leaned back in his chair, a slight smile playing on his lips. "So you're saying someone else translated this perfectly and gave you credit?" Yes, no, I mean—" Derek was spiraling, his usual composure shattered. Tommy Lou spoke up. "This translation is excellent, professional quality. Whoever did this understands not just the languages, but the business context." "Which Derek clearly doesn't," Victoria added. "So either Derek suddenly became a translation genius in the last hour, or someone else did this." "But why?" Victor asked, though his eyes gleamed with interest. Why would someone give Derek credit for work he didn't do? The question hung in the air. Lucia, dusting a picture frame nearby, kept her expression neutral. "Unless," Victor continued slowly, "our mystery translator is making a point, showing us that anyone could claim credit for their work. That maybe that's been happening all along." Derek's face went white. "You think I've been stealing credit?" "Have you?" Victor asked directly. "No, I mean sometimes team efforts get attributed to leaders, but that's normal." "Is it?" Victoria interrupted. "What about the Johnson project last year? You got that bonus, but I heard Susan from accounting did most of the analysis." "Or the Singapore expansion plan," Patricia added. "Jennifer from marketing said she wrote the entire proposal, but somehow you presented it." Derek backed toward the door. "This is ridiculous. A conspiracy theory. I'm being framed by someone, and you're all just—" "Sit down, Derek," Victor commanded, his voice sharp. "We're not done." Derek sat, but his hands were shaking. Victor pulled up the original HangTech document. "Our translator, whoever they are, has given us a perfect translation. Tommy confirms it's accurate. We can respond to HangTech properly now. The deal is saved." "So Derek gets the money?" Patricia asked, confused. "Derek gets nothing," Victor said flatly. "He didn't do this work, but our translator has made their point. They don't want money, they want justice." He stood up, walking to the window again. "Someone in this building has been invisible, underestimated, overlooked. They have skills we desperately needed, and we never knew because we never looked, never asked." His reflection in the window seemed to be looking directly at Lucia, though she knew it was impossible. "The HangTech deal will go through," he continued. "But I want to know who our translator is. Not to reward them, they've made it clear they don't want that, but to understand how we've been so blind." "What about Derek?" Victoria asked. "Derek is going to resign," Victor said calmly. Aren't you, Derek? You're going to realize that your ambition has outpaced your ability and you need to pursue opportunities elsewhere. You can't force me. I can't. You submitted a translation that would have cost us $200 million. You've apparently been taking credit for other people's work, and now someone has demonstrated that you're not just incompetent, but unnecessary. Derek stood up, his face red with rage. This isn't over. I'll sue. You'll leave quietly with a standard severance package, Victoria said. Or we'll investigate every project you've worked on, every bonus you've received, every claim you've made. How much of it was really yours, Derek? Derek looked around the room, finding no allies. Finally, his shoulders slumped. I'll clean out my desk. Tonight, Victor said. Security will escort you. After Derek left the room, was quiet for a moment. We still don't know who translated it, Patricia said. No, Victor agreed. But I have a feeling they're closer than we think. And when they're ready, they'll tell us. He looked directly at the doorway where Lucia stood, and for a moment she thought he knew. But then his gaze moved on. Send the translation to Hang Tech, he instructed Patricia. Accept their proposal with the modifications our anonymous friend suggested. And Patricia, start reviewing our hiring practices. We're obviously overlooking talent. As the executives dispersed, Lucia retreated to the service areas. Her heart was still pounding, but there was a satisfaction in watching Derek's downfall. He'd stolen credit from so many people, and now he'd been destroyed by his own methods. Her phone buzzed. Another text from her mother. The doctor called. They said if we can't pay by Monday, they'll give the surgery slot to someone else. I understand, Mija. You've done your best. Lucia stared at the text, tears blurring her vision. She'd saved Reeves Technologies' deal, exposed Derek's incompetence, and proven her worth. But she was still invisible, still poor, still watching her mother die. She thought about going to Victor now, confessing everything. But would he believe her? Or would he think she was trying to claim credit after the fact, like Derek would have done, as she gathered her supplies to leave for the day she found Victoria Reeves waiting by the service elevator? Lucia, isn't it? Victoria said. Yes, Ms. Reeves. Victoria studied her for a long moment. You've worked here for 3 years. Yes, ma'am. Always on the executive floor. Most of the time, yes. Victoria nodded slowly. Must be interesting hearing all our conversations, learning how the business works. Lucia kept her expression neutral. I just focus on my work, Ms. Reeves. I'm sure you do. Victoria pressed the elevator button. You know, my brother is many things, but he's not stupid. He knows our translator is someone with access to this floor, someone who's been here all day, someone who knew exactly when to act. The elevator arrived and Victoria stepped in. Just before the doors closed, she said, Sometimes the best way to hide is in plain sight, and sometimes the best time to reveal yourself is when you have nothing left to lose. The doors closed, leaving Lucia alone in the hallway. She stood there for a long moment, Victoria's words echoing in her mind. Then she walked to the executive bulletin board where Victor's offer was posted. $55,000 for revealing herself as the translator. She pulled out her father's jade pen and a piece of paper. But instead of writing a translation, she wrote a letter. Mr. Reeves, my name is Lucia Vega. My father was David Chen, who translated for 3 of your early international contracts before his death. You probably don't remember him. He was just another contractor, invisible like I've been. For 3 years, I've cleaned your offices, served your coffee, and listened to your conversations. I have a degree from Columbia in international business. I speak 4 languages fluently, including the technical Mandarin you needed today. I became invisible because I needed this job, needed the health insurance, needed the steady paycheck while my mother undergoes cancer treatment. The same treatment that costs exactly $27,400, your daily salary. I translated the Hang Tech document because it was the right thing to do. I gave Derek credit because I wanted you to see how easily work can be stolen, credit, misappropriated talent, overlooked. But I can't be invisible anymore. My mother needs surgery by Monday or she dies. So I'm stepping forward not for the money, though I desperately need it, but because I'm tired of being unseen. If you want to verify my abilities, test me. Any document, any language I claim to know. But please decide quickly. Every hour that passes is an hour less my mother has. Lucia Vega, Columbia University. Class of 2019. Daughter of David Chen. The best technical translator you never knew you had. She signed it with her father's jade pen, the ink flowing green against the white paper. Then she walked to Victor's office and slid it under the door. As she returned to gather her things, she heard Victor's voice sharp with surprise. "Patricia Victoria, get back here now!" But Lucia didn't stop. She took the service elevator down, changed out of her uniform in the basement locker room, and walked out into the evening air. Whatever happened next, she was done being invisible. Her phone rang as she reached the subway station. Unknown number. "Hello. Lucia Vega." It was Victor's voice. "Yes?" "Don't get on that train. There's a car waiting for you outside. We need to talk." "I've said everything I needed to say in the letter." "No," Victor said, and for the first time she heard something like humility in his voice. "You've said what you needed to say. Now it's my turn to respond. Please. Your mother's life depends on this conversation happening tonight." Lucia looked at the subway entrance, then back at the street where a black town car was indeed waiting. "5 minutes," she said. "That's all I need." She walked to the car, her father's jade pen heavy in her pocket. The driver opened the door, and she saw Victor sitting inside the hang-tech document in one hand, her letter in the other. "Your father," he said as she got in, "translated the Chen-Hartley merger documents in 2018. Perfect work. I tried to hire him full-time, but he said he preferred freelance." "He liked his independence," Lucia said carefully. "And his daughter inherited his linguistic gifts but not his freedom," Victor said. "Because of medical bills. Because of cancer. Because of a system that crushes talent under the weight of circumstance." "Is there a point to this?" Victor handed her a check. It was made out for $55,000. "That's the reward for the translation," he said. "You earned it." Derek is gone, and good riddance." Victor leaned back in the seat. "But that's not why you're here. I want to offer you a job." "I have a job." "No, you have a survival mechanism. I'm offering you a position as Director of International Communications. $150,000 a year to start. Full benefits. And a signing bonus of $30,000 payable immediately." Lucia stared at him. "Why?" "Because I've been an idiot," Victor said simply. "I've had one of the most talented linguists in the city cleaning my office for 3 years. I've overlooked talent because it didn't come in the package I expected. And because your letter made me realize something." "What?" "That invisible doesn't mean worthless. It just means we're not looking in the right places." He pulled out another document. "This is the employment contract. Read it carefully, I'm sure you'll understand every word. But the key point is this: you start Monday as an executive. Your first task will be reviewing all our international contracts for similar issues to what you found in the Hang Tech deal." "What about my mother's surgery?" "The signing bonus can be available tonight. Direct transfer to the hospital if you prefer." Lucia looked at the contract, reading quickly through the terms. It was legitimate, generous even. But something bothered her. "What about the others?" she asked. "Others. The other invisible people. The cleaning staff, the security guards, the cafeteria workers. How many of them have hidden talents you've never bothered to discover?" Victor was quiet for a moment. "I don't know." "Then the deal changes," Lucia said, surprising herself with her boldness. "I'll take the job, but with conditions. First, you institute a program to identify and develop talent among all staff, not just executives. Second, you create an education fund for employees' children. Third, you guarantee that no one will be fired when Hang Tech tries to implement that workforce reduction clause. That's a significant ask. And I'm a significant asset, Lucia replied. Or would you prefer to go back to relying on people like Derek? Victor laughed a genuine sound. Your father would be proud. You negotiate like he did, quietly but firmly. Is that a yes? It's a yes. He extended his hand. Welcome to the visible world, Ms. Vega. She shook his hand, feeling the weight of 3 years lifting from her shoulders. One more thing, she said. I want to keep my desk in the executive suite. Of course. No, I mean my current supply closet. I want to turn it into an office, a reminder of where I came from, and a symbol to every other invisible person in this building that things can change. Victor smiled. You're going to be trouble, aren't you? The good kind, Lucia promised. As the car pulled up to the hospital where she could pay for her mother's surgery, Lucia clutched her father's jade pen. She'd sign her new contract with it, just as he'd signed his translations. But this time, the signature would be visible to everyone. The invisible maid was gone. In her place stood Lucia Vega, Director of International Communications, holder of secrets, speaker of languages, and proof that sometimes the most valuable people are the ones you never see coming. She thought about Derek, probably drinking himself into a stupor somewhere, wondering how his perfect plan had fallen apart. He'd never know it was the woman who brought him coffee who orchestrated his downfall. The woman he'd looked through 100 times. The woman whose invisibility had been her weapon and her shield. Tomorrow she'd walk into Reeves Technologies through the front door instead of the service entrance. She'd take the executive elevator instead of the service one. She'd sit in meetings instead of cleaning up after them. But tonight, she had a mother to save and a future to claim. As she entered the hospital, check in hand, she thought she heard her father's voice on the wind. Survival first, mija, but after survival comes victory. She smiled, touching the jade pen in her pocket. Victory, indeed. The fluorescent lights of the hospital payment office cast harsh shadows across Lucia's face. As she signed the forms, her father's jade pen moving steadily across each line. The clerk barely looked up, processing the $55,000 payment with the same detached efficiency she'd use for a $20 copay. But for Lucia, each signature was a victory, each stamp of approval, another barrier broken between her mother and life. The surgery is confirmed for 7 a.m. Monday, the clerk said, sliding a folder across the counter. Pre-op starts at 5. Don't be late. Don't be late. As if Lucia would risk being even a second tardy when her mother's life hung in the balance. She took the folder, tucking it carefully into her bag next to the employment contract Victor had given her. 2 documents that would reshape her entire world sitting side by side like before and after photographs. She found her mother in room 847 asleep, but restless, her face drawn with the kind of pain that medication could only dull, never fully erase. Maria Vega had once been beautiful in that quiet way that made people look twice, not because she demanded attention, but because her grace drew it naturally. The cancer had stolen the fullness from her cheeks and the luster from her hair, but it hadn't touched the dignity in the way she held herself even in sleep. "Mama," Lucia whispered, taking her hand. Maria's eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly. "Mija, what time is it?" "It's 8:30. I have news." "You look different." Her mother's voice was weak but perceptive. "Something's changed." Lucia pulled the payment confirmation from the folder. "Your surgery is scheduled, Monday morning. It's all paid for." Maria stared at the paper, then at her daughter. "How?" "We didn't have Lucia. What did you do?" "I translated something. For the company. They paid me for it." Cleaning companies don't pay $50,000 for translations. "No." Lucia agreed, settling into the uncomfortable visitor's chair. "But technology companies do, especially when the translation saves a $200 million deal." She told her mother everything, then the words spilling out like water through a broken dam. 3 years of invisibility, of listening and learning, of hiding her education and abilities. The Hang Tech document. Derek's incompetence, her anonymous intervention. The letter slipped under Victor's door, the car ride, the job offer that would change everything. Maria listened without interrupting, her eyes growing wider with each revelation. When Lucia finished, her mother was crying silently, tears tracking down her hollowed cheeks. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered, "but also so angry that you had to hide for so long. I did what I had to do. You did more than that." Maria squeezed her hand with surprising strength. "You survived with grace. That's harder than just surviving." A nurse entered to check Maria's vitals, and Lucia used the interruption to compose herself. The emotional weight of the day was catching up with her. The terror of discovery, the satisfaction of Derek's downfall, the surreal reality of her transformation from invisible maid to visible executive. Her phone buzzed with a text from Victor Reeves. "Congratulations on your appointment. I look forward to working with someone who understands the value of seeing everything while being seen by no one." So Victoria had known, or at least suspected. Lucia wondered how many others had noticed the maid who moved too carefully, listened too intently, understood too much. Perhaps invisibility was less perfect than she'd believed. "Miss Vega." Dr. Patterson appeared in the doorway, his expression carefully professional. "I heard the payment went through. Excellent news. We'll start prep work tomorrow, run final blood tests, make sure everything's optimal for Monday." "What are her chances?" Lucia asked the question she'd been afraid to voice, finally escaping. "With the surgery 70-30 in favor of full recovery. Without it." He didn't need to finish. They all knew what without it meant. After he left, Maria patted the bed beside her. "Sit with me, mija. Tell me about this new job." Lucia curled up beside her mother, careful not to disturb the IV lines. "Director of International Communications. I'll be managing all their foreign partnerships, translations, cultural consulting. Everything Papa used to do as a freelancer, but with a team under me." "A team," Maria repeated, wonder in her voice. "My daughter, the executive. We used to dream about this, your father and I. When you graduated from Columbia, we thought—" She trailed off both of them, remembering the celebrations cut short by diagnosis, the promising job offers withdrawn when Lucia needed flexibility for caregiving, the slow slide from middle-class comfort to desperate poverty. "The past is past," Lucia said firmly. "What matters is tomorrow." "Speaking of tomorrow, you should go home. Get ready for your new life." "I'm staying here tonight." "Lucia. I've been invisible for 3 years, Mama. One more night won't hurt, and I'm not leaving you alone before surgery." Maria didn't argue further. They spent the evening watching terrible hospital television, sharing stories of Papa planning what they'd do when Maria recovered. Simple dreams. Sunday dinners without the shadow of death, walks in the park, without counting the cost of each moment, conversations about the future that extended beyond the next treatment cycle. At midnight, Lucia's phone rang. Victor Reeves. "Am I calling too late?" he asked when she stepped into the hallway to answer. "I'm at the hospital. Sleep isn't really happening." "How's your mother?" The question surprised her with its apparent sincerity. "Scheduled for Monday. Hopeful." "Good." A pause. "I've been thinking about what you said. About the invisible people. I want to implement your conditions, but I need your help designing the program." "You want me to start working before I officially start?" "I want your insight while it's fresh. While you still remember what it feels like to be unseen. Once you've been visible for a while, that memory fades. Trust me." Lucia leaned against the cool hospital wall. "What did you have in mind?" "Breakfast tomorrow, not at the office, somewhere neutral. We'll discuss the program and you can tell me who else in the company might be hiding their potential. I won't betray people who trusted me with their stories." "I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to help me create a system where they don't have to hide anymore." She considered this. "Where Bill, Rosemary's Diner, 7 a.m. Lucia almost laughed. Rosemary's was where the service staff went for coffee before their shifts, a deliberately unglamorous spot 3 blocks from Reeves Technologies. Victor had probably never set foot in it. You know what kind of place that is? I do now. I spent the evening researching where my employees actually go, as opposed to where I assumed they went. It was educational. 7 a.m., she agreed. After hanging up, she returned to her mother's room to find Maria awake, watching her with knowing eyes. Your new boss. He wants to discuss making changes, helping other people like me. Be careful, mija. Men like him, they mean well, but meaning well and doing well are different things. I know, but I have leverage now, and I plan to use it. The night passed slowly, marked by the rhythmic beeping of machines and the soft footsteps of nurses on their rounds. Lucia dozed fitfully in the chair, jerking awake each time her mother's breathing changed pattern. At 5 a.m., she kissed Maria's forehead and headed home to shower and change. Her apartment, a studio in Queens that cost more than it was worth and offered less than anyone deserved, looked different somehow. Same water-stained ceiling, same rattling radiator, same view of the brick wall across the alley. But knowing she could leave that this was temporary, rather than permanent, transformed it from a prison to a way station. She dressed carefully, choosing the one business suit that had survived the various purges of their possessions. It was 5 years old, bought for her Columbia graduation, but well made enough to still look professional. She paired it with the watch her father had given her for her 21st birthday, another survivor of their financial decimation. Looking in the mirror, she saw neither the Columbia graduate she'd been, nor the invisible maid she'd become, but something new, someone who'd learned to navigate both worlds and belong fully to neither. Rosemary's diner was exactly as crowded as she'd expected at 7 a.m., full of hospital workers ending night shifts, construction crews starting early days, and service staff grabbing coffee before heading to the gleaming towers where they'd spend their days being overlooked. Victor sat in a corner booth, looking conspicuously out of place in his $1,000 suit. Several of her former colleagues from the cleaning staff were there, and their eyes widened when she slid into the booth across from him. She could feel the questions radiating from their tables. What was Lucia doing with Mr. Reeves? Had she complained about something? Was she in trouble? You're causing a stir, she told Victor quietly. Good. Maybe it's time I caused the right kind of stir. He pushed a folder across the table. I stayed up all night working on this. A proposal for what I'm calling the Hidden Talent Initiative. She opened it, scanning quickly. It was more comprehensive than she'd expected. Skills assessments for all staff education subsidies, mentorship programs, anonymous suggestion systems that could bypass traditional hierarchies. This is impressive, she admitted. But implementation will be the challenge. Middle management won't like it. They benefit from the current system. Which is why I need you to help me identify the obstacles, the Derek Willises of every department who've built their careers on others' suppressed potential. A waitress approached Carmen, who Lucia knew worked nights here and days cleaning at a law firm. What can I get you folks? They ordered coffee and eggs, and after Carmen left, Lucia said, she speaks 3 languages and has a paralegal certificate, can't afford law school. See, that's what I mean, Victor said, leaning forward. How many Carmens are there? How much talent are we wasting because we assume someone pouring coffee can't also parse contracts? More than you'd believe. But also, why now? Why do you suddenly care? Victor was quiet for a moment, stirring sugar into his coffee. My father was a janitor. Did you know that? Lucia's surprise must have shown because he smiled grimly. Not the story I usually tell. I prefer the entrepreneur narrative, the self-made man pulling himself up by his bootstraps. But the truth is, my father cleaned offices at night so I could go to school during the day. He had a degree in engineering from Seoul National University, but it meant nothing here. Wrong country, wrong connections, wrong color. He pulled out his phone, showing her an old photograph. A younger Victor stood next to a man in a janitor's uniform, both of them smiling in front of what looked like MIT's campus. He died the year after I graduated. Never got to see what I built. But more importantly, I never got to see what he could have built if someone had looked past the uniform. So I'm your redemption. No, you're my wake-up call. When I saw your letter, when I realized you were David Chen's daughter, it was like seeing my father's story repeated. Brilliant people pushed into corners because the system only recognizes certain types of visibility. Their food arrived and they ate in relative silence, both processing the weight of shared history. Around them, the diner hummed with conversation in multiple languages, Spanish, Mandarin, Polish, Arabic, a reminder of how much intelligence and experience was contained in this one unremarkable room. There's something else, Victor said eventually. The hang tech deal. They want to meet the translator. They want to meet Derek. They want to meet the real translator. Somehow they know it wasn't him. My guess is the quality difference between his initial attempt and the final version was too dramatic. Lucia set down her fork. When? Tuesday. They're flying in specifically for this. Mr. Zhang himself, the CEO. That's the day after my mother's surgery. I can try to postpone. No. Lucia's mind was already working through possibilities. If the surgery goes well, she'll be in recovery. If it doesn't... She didn't finish the thought. I'll be there. You don't have to. Yes, I do. This is my job now. Besides, I want to meet the man who wrote that contract. There are some clever provisions in there that I'd like to discuss. Victor smiled. Already thinking like an executive. I've been thinking like an executive for 3 years. The difference is, now you're listening. After breakfast, they walked back toward Reeves Technologies together, an odd pair, the CEO and the soon-to-be former Maid, crossing the invisible bridge between two worlds. As they passed the service entrance, Lucia had used for 3 years, she paused. I want to go in this way one more time, she said. Victor looked confused. Why? Because Monday I'll walk through the front door as someone else. I need to say goodbye to who I was. He nodded slowly. I'll see you Monday then. Unless, do you want me to be at the hospital for your mother? The offer surprised her again with its humanity. No, but thank you. She entered through the service door, breathing in the familiar smell of industrial cleaning supplies and floor wax. The basement locker room was mostly empty, shift change still an hour away. She opened her locker number 73 because 7 and 3 had been her parents' lucky numbers and looked at the uniform hanging inside. 3 years reduced to polyester and a name tag. 3 years of being nobody special, just another set of hands pushing a mop, wiping down surfaces, making the important people's lives run smoothly without them ever noticing who was doing it. She heard footsteps and turned to find Elena Martinez, the head of cleaning services, standing behind her. Lucia, you're not on the schedule today. I'm quitting, Lucia said simply. Monday I start a different position. Elena's eyes narrowed. You were the one, the translator. It wasn't a question, but Lucia nodded anyway. I knew it, Elena said, but she was smiling. 3 years I watch you thinking this girl is too careful, too observant. You see everything but say nothing. And your hands you hold cleaning supplies like they're foreign objects. I needed the job. We all need the job. But you were hiding something bigger. Elena stepped closer. The others, they're talking. How you sat with the big boss at Rosemary's. How Mr. Willis is gone and you're taking his office. Not his office. And its director of international communications, not... I know what it is. Elena pulled her into an unexpected hug. You did it, mija. You escaped. I want to help others escape too. Elena pulled back, studying her. Be careful with that. Some people, they're comfortable being invisible. It's safer. You make them visible, you also make them targets. It was a warning Lucia would remember later, when the Hidden Talent Initiative began revealing just how many people had chosen invisibility, not from lack of options, but from an abundance of caution. She cleaned out her locker, keeping only her name tag as a reminder. Everything else, the spare uniform, the comfortable shoes, the small mirror she'd used to make sure she looked appropriately forgettable, she left behind. As she walked back through the basement, she passed the break room where she'd eaten hundreds of lonely lunches, listening to her colleagues share stories in languages their employers assumed they didn't speak. She passed the supply closet where she'd hidden during her first week, overwhelmed by the distance between who she was and who she had to pretend to be. She passed the freight elevator she'd used to move between floors, a ghost in the machine of corporate success. At the service door, she met James, the security guard, who worked the basement entrance. He'd always been kind to her, remembering her name when others didn't bother asking about her mother, when he noticed the hospital bracelets she sometimes forgot to remove. "Heard you're moving up in the world," he said with a gentle smile. "News travels fast." "Always does down here. We see everything, hear everything." He opened the door for her with unusual ceremony. "Don't forget us when you're up there making decisions." "I won't." They all say that. But his smile took the sting out of the words. "You might actually mean it, though." Outside, the morning had grown warm summer, asserting itself over the city's concrete and glass. Lucia stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the Reeves Technologies Tower. 42 floors of ambition and achievement, and she'd cleaned half of them. Monday, she'd take the express elevator to the executive floor, not to empty trash cans, but to occupy a desk, make decisions be seen. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Surgery moved to 6 a.m. Doctor says better timing for the OR schedule." An hour earlier. One less hour of waiting, of wondering, of watching her mother pretend not to be terrified. She texted back, "I'll be there at 4. Then another text, this one from an unknown number. "Ms. Chen Vega, this is Zhang Wei from Hang Tech. I look forward to meeting the person who truly understood our proposal. Your translation was elegant. Your father trained you well." The message stopped her cold. Zhang Wei knew her father, knew she was his daughter. How much else did he know? She started to text back, then stopped. This was the kind of conversation that needed to happen in person, where she could read faces and gauge intentions. Tuesday's meeting had just become much more interesting. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation and anxiety. She spent Saturday with her mother helping her prepare for the surgery, pretending they were planning for something routine rather than life-threatening. Sunday, she dedicated to research, diving deep into Hang Tech's history, their previous partnerships, their corporate culture. If Zhang Wei knew about her father, she needed to know everything about him. What she found was intriguing. Zhang Wei had built Hang Tech from nothing, starting as a factory worker who taught himself English by translating technical manuals at night. He'd risen through education and determination, eventually founding his own company based on the principle that understanding between cultures was as important as technical excellence. No wonder the Hang Tech proposal had been in Mandarin. It wasn't just a test of linguistic capability, but of cultural comprehension. Zhang wanted to know if Reeves Technologies could meet them as equals, not just as Americans expecting the world to speak their language. Monday arrived with the harsh buzz of her alarm at 3:30 a.m. The hospital at that hour was a different world, quieter, but somehow more intense, as if the building itself was holding its breath. She found her mother already awake, staring at the ceiling. "Couldn't sleep either," Lucia asked. "Too much thinking. About your father, about you, about what comes next." "What comes next is you get better. Everything else is just details." Maria smiled, reaching for her daughter's hand. "You sound like him. He always could make the impossible sound manageable." The surgical team arrived with professional cheerfulness, checking charts, confirming information, preparing Maria for transport. Dr. Patterson appeared, looking remarkably alert for the early hour. "Everything looks good," he assured them. "The tumor hasn't grown since the last scan. Your mother's vitals are strong. We have every reason to be optimistic." As they wheeled Maria toward the operating room, she squeezed Lucia's hand one last time. "Whatever happens, mija, you've already saved me. These 3 years watching you sacrifice everything, it broke my heart. But watching you rise now, that heals it. I'll be here when you wake up, Lucia promised. I know. Then she was gone, disappeared behind doors that might as well have been portals to another dimension. Lucia stood in the suddenly empty hallway, feeling the weight of the next 8 hours. The surgery was complex, requiring careful navigation around critical brain structures. She went to the surgical waiting room, settling into a chair that would become intimately familiar over the coming hours. At exactly 9 a.m., her phone rang. Victor. How is she? In surgery. 3 hours down 5 to go. Do you need anything? Just time to pass. I could send work, he offered. Sometimes distraction helps. She almost laughed. What kind of work does a director who hasn't officially started do? The kind that shapes how she'll run her department. I'm sending you files on our current international partnerships. Maybe you'll see something I've missed. The files arrived moments later, and despite everything, Lucia found herself drawn into them. Contracts with suppliers in 12 countries, partnership agreements in various stages of completion. Correspondence that revealed how much was lost in translation, not just linguistically, but culturally. She began making notes, identifying patterns of miscommunication, places where American assumptions had created friction with international partners. It was easier than watching the clock, easier than imagining what was happening in the operating room. At hour 5, she looked up to find Victor Reeves entering the waiting room carrying 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this, Victoria said, sitting beside her. How did you know I was here? Victor mentioned it. Also, I've been watching you longer than you might think. Victoria handed her the coffee prepared exactly how Lucia liked it, which meant Victoria had been paying attention during those executive meetings where Lucia had served refreshments. You knew, Lucia said. It wasn't a question. I suspected. You moved differently than the others. Purposefully, like someone who knew exactly where they needed to be, to hear what they needed to hear. Why didn't you say anything? Victoria sipped her coffee thoughtfully. Because sometimes the most powerful position is the one nobody knows you hold. I figured you had your reasons. Good ones, judging by where we are. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the hospital wake up around them. Finally, Victoria said, Zhang Wei is an interesting man. He and your father worked together once years ago. Did you know? I'm just learning about it. It wasn't just professional. They were friends. Zhang tried to help when your father got sick, but David was too proud to accept charity. That sounds like Papa. Zhang won't see your position as charity. He'll see it as destiny correcting itself. The daughter completing the father's work. Before Lucia could respond, Dr. Patterson appeared in the doorway, still in surgical scrubs. Both women stood immediately. The surgery went perfectly, he said, and Lucia's knees nearly buckled with relief. We got all of it. The tumor came out cleanly, no complications. She's in recovery now. When can I see her? Give us an hour to get her settled in the ICU. She'll be groggy, but you can sit with her. After he left, Lucia found herself crying for the first time since this ordeal began. Victoria held her, this woman who'd barely acknowledged her existence for 3 years now, offering comfort without hesitation. You did it, Victoria murmured. You saved her. We all saved her, Lucia corrected. Victor's money, your support, the doctor's skill. I just translated a document. You revealed yourself. That took more courage than any of the rest. An hour later, Lucia sat beside her mother's bed in the ICU, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. Maria's head was wrapped in bandages, her face pale but peaceful. The monitors showed stable vitals, the mechanical ventilator breathing for her, while the anesthesia wore off. Your daughter is remarkable, a voice said from the doorway. Lucia turned to find a distinguished Asian man in an expensive suit, his silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. Mr. Zhang. He entered, bowing slightly. I apologize for the intrusion. I arrived early for tomorrow's meeting and heard about your mother's surgery. I wanted to pay my respects. You knew my father. David was my friend. We met at a translation conference 15 years ago. He helped me understand American business culture when I was just starting to expand internationally. Zhang moved closer, looking at Maria with surprising tenderness. He spoke of you constantly. His brilliant daughter, who could speak 4 languages by age 12. He never mentioned you. He was protective. He knew I would have offered you a position with Hang Tech, and he wanted you to make your own path. Zhang smiled sadly. I don't think he imagined your path would involve hiding your light for so long. It was necessary. I understand necessity. I cleaned floors in Beijing for 2 years while teaching myself English. Sometimes invisibility is the only way to survive until you're strong enough to be seen. Maria stirred her eyes, fluttering open. She focused slowly first on Lucia, then on the stranger beside her. Mama, this is Mr. Zhang. He was Papa's friend. Maria's eyes widened in recognition. Wei Zhang Wei. Hello, Maria. David spoke of you often, too. He said you would change the world. Maria whispered, her voice hoarse but clear. That you understood how to bridge cultures. Your husband was the bridge, Zhang replied. I just walked across it. He stayed for only a few more minutes, but before leaving, he handed Lucia a card. My personal number. Not for business, for family. David would have wanted me to look after you both. After he left, Maria squeezed Lucia's hand weakly. Your father had such interesting friends. Apparently, he had an interesting life we knew nothing about. He loved his secrets, but he loved us more. Maria's eyes were already closing again. Go. You have a new job to start. That's tomorrow. Today I'm staying here. Lucia, I'm staying. And she did through the afternoon and evening, watching her mother slowly return to herself. By nightfall, Maria was sitting up complaining about the hospital food, a sure sign of recovery. As visiting hours ended, Lucia kissed her mother goodbye and made her way home. Tomorrow, she would walk into Reeves Technologies as Director of International Communications. Tomorrow, she would meet officially with Zhang Wei and begin reshaping how the company engaged with the world. Tomorrow, she would be visible, valuable, vital. But tonight, she stood in her small apartment, looking at her father's jade pen, thinking about bridges, the ones we build, the ones we cross, and the ones we burn behind us. She'd spent 3 years as a ghost in the machine of corporate America. Now it was time to become the machine itself, or at least the part that made it run smoothly across borders and languages. Her phone buzzed with a final text from Victor. Welcome to the visible world, Ms. Chen Vega. Try not to revolutionize everything on your first day. She smiled, setting out her clothes for tomorrow. Not the designer suits Derek had worn like armor, but her own style, professional, but authentic, visible, but still essentially herself. The invisible maid was gone. The visible executive was about to be born. But Lucia Chen Vega, daughter of David and Maria, speaker of languages and keeper of secrets, survivor and thriver, she had been there all along, waiting for the world to finally see what had always been in plain sight. Tuesday morning arrived with a clarity that felt almost supernatural, the kind of crisp air that made Manhattan's glass towers look like they were cut from crystal. Lucia stood before the main entrance of Reeves Technologies, her reflection in the polished doors showing a woman she was still learning to recognize. The same face, the same dark hair pulled into a professional bun, but something fundamental had shifted in her bearing. She no longer moved to avoid being seen. She moved with purpose, expecting to be acknowledged. The security guard at the front desk did a double take when she presented her new executive ID badge. Thomas, who'd watched her slip through the service entrance for 3 years, stared at the title beneath her name, Director of International Communications. Ms. Chen Vega, he said formally, though his eyes sparkled with something that might have been pride. Welcome to the executive entrance. Thank you, Thomas, though we both know I've been entering this building for years. Different door, different person, he replied with a knowing smile. The executive elevator is to your right. The executive elevator was a marvel of understated luxury. Wood paneling, soft lighting, and most importantly, direct access to the 42nd floor without stops. As it rose, Lucia thought about the service elevator she'd used for 3 years, stopping at every floor packed with invisible people carrying the tools that kept the visible world running. The doors opened to reveal Patricia Kumar waiting for her, a tablet in hand, and an expression of carefully managed excitement. Lucia, perfect timing. The meeting with Zhang Wei is in an hour, but Victor wants to brief you first. Also, your office is ready. Well, your temporary office. We're still converting the supply closet as you requested, which is... She paused, searching for words. Unconventional. Most effective things are. Lucia replied, following Patricia down the hallway she'd cleaned hundreds of times. They passed the conference room, where everything had started just days ago, where Derek had failed so spectacularly, and she had succeeded so invisibly. The room was being prepared for the Zhongwei meeting, fresh flowers on the table, the morning light streaming through windows she'd personally ensured were spotless. Victor's office door was open, and he was on the phone gesturing for them to enter. Lucia noticed immediately what had changed. The photo on his desk, that had always faced away from visitors, was now turned outward. It showed his father in that janitor's uniform, standing proudly beside a younger Victor. "No, Senator, I understand your concerns," Victor was saying into the phone, his tone patient but firm. "But hang tech is our future, whether Washington likes it or not. The global economy doesn't care about election cycles." He ended the call and turned to Lucia, his expression shifting to something almost approaching warmth. "Our political friends are nervous about the hang tech deal. Too much technology transfer to China, they say. As if technology hasn't been borderless for decades." He gestured to a chair. "How's your mother?" "Recovering well. The doctors are optimistic." "Good. Now about Zhang Wei, he specifically requested you be the lead on this meeting. He was quite insistent, actually, said something about honoring old debts." My father was apparently more connected than any of us knew. Zhang's assistant sent over some background information. Victor handed her a folder. "Your father didn't just translate for Zhang. He helped broker Hang Tech's first American partnership 15 years ago. He chose to remain uncredited, took a flat fee instead of percentage points. That decision cost him millions." Lucia opened the folder, finding documents in her father's distinctive handwriting, contracts bearing his neat signatures in the margins. One note caught her eye. "Wei, this deal will make you rich, but remember, wealth is just a tool. Use it to build bridges, not walls. David." "He never told us," she whispered. "Men like your father, they don't broadcast their sacrifices," Victor said. "They just make them and move forward. Zhang wants to correct that oversight. He's prepared to offer you something beyond the standard partnership terms." "I don't want special treatment." "It's not special treatment. It's delayed compensation. There's a difference." Victor stood, moving to the window. "Zhang plays a long game. He's been watching Reeves Technologies for years, waiting for the right moment. Your translation wasn't just accurate. It showed him we finally had someone who understood both sides." Patricia cleared her throat. "We should discuss the meeting structure. Zhang brought a team of 12, including his daughter, who's being groomed to take over Hang Tech. They've booked the entire top floor of the St. Regis." "His daughter?" Lucia asked. "Mei Lin Zhang. Harvard MBA, speaks 5 languages, and according to our intelligence, she's the one who actually wrote most of the proposal you translated." Lucia felt a flutter of something, anticipation mixed with apprehension. If Mei Lin had written the proposal, she'd crafted those clever loopholes, those subtle provisions that could have trapped Reeves Technologies if they'd proceeded with Derek's translation. "She's testing us," Lucia said suddenly. "Or testing me specifically. The proposal was a puzzle, and I solved it, but that was just the first move." Victor turned from the window, his eyes sharp with interest. "What do you mean?" "The provisions about workforce restructuring, the arbitration clauses, the intellectual property sections, They were all technically legal, but culturally aggressive. It was written to see if we'd catch the implications, if we'd push back or blindly accept. She wants to know if we're partners or patsies. And what do we want to be? Victor asked, though his smile suggested he already knew her answer. Neither. We want to be equals. That means showing them we understand the game, but won't play by rules that disadvantage us. Then you'd better get ready to prove it, Patricia said, checking her tablet. They're arriving early. Zhang Wei is already in the building. Lucia stood smoothing her skirt, not nervously, but with the deliberate precision she'd learned from years of making herself presentable while invisible. Where's my temporary office? I need 5 minutes to prepare. Patricia led her to a corner space that had belonged to a vice president who'd recently retired. It was everything Derek had probably dreamed of: floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture, a view of the city that made you feel like you owned it. This is too much, Lucia said immediately. It's temporary, Patricia reminded her, though I still don't understand why you want to work in a converted supply closet. Because that's where I discovered who I really was, Lucia replied, setting her bag on the imposing desk. In the margins, in the forgotten spaces. That's where the real work happens. She took out her father's jade pen, placing it carefully in the center of the desk blotter. Then she pulled up the hang tech proposal on her computer, reviewing her notes one final time. But her mind kept drifting to Mei Lin Zhang, this shadow player who'd crafted such an elegant trap. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Victor Reeves entered carrying a small box. Peace offering, she said, setting it on the desk. Inside was a business card holder, silver with jade accents. It belonged to our father, Victoria explained. He'd appreciate it going to someone who understands the weight of family legacy. Victoria, I say. Zhang Wei isn't the only one who recognizes delayed compensation. I watched you for 3 years, Lucia. Watched you perfect the art of being invisible while seeing everything. That's a skill most executives never develop because they're too busy being seen. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Mei Lin Zhang is brilliant, but she's also young. She mistakes cleverness for wisdom. Don't let her intimidate you. How do you know her? We met at a Women in Technology conference last year. She gave a presentation on breaking cultural barriers in international business. Ironic considering she builds as many as she breaks. After Victoria left, Lucia stood at the window looking down at the city streets where invisible people hurried to serve the visible ones. In a few minutes, she'd walk into a conference room, not as the one serving coffee, but as the one shaping million-dollar decisions. Her phone vibrated with a text from her mother. About to walk for the first time post-surgery. Wish you could see me. Lucia smiled, texting back, I'm walking too, Mama. Into a whole new world. The conference room had been transformed into a subtle display of American corporate power. Fresh-cut flowers, perfectly aligned leather portfolios, technology seamlessly integrated into every surface. But Lucia noticed the small touches someone had added. Probably Patricia, a tea service alongside the coffee. Properly oriented place cards with names in both English and Chinese characters. Even the feng shui-conscious arrangement of chairs. Zhang Wei entered first, and in person, he commanded the room even more than in the hospital. He wore his success like a second skin, comfortable and unquestionable. Behind him came his team, a carefully selected group that Lucia immediately recognized as a balance of experience and innovation, age and youth, Eastern and Western education. But it was Mei Lin Zhang who drew her attention. She was perhaps 28, with the kind of sharp beauty that came from intelligence rather than genetics. Her suit was impeccable Chanel, if Lucia's eye was correct, but she wore it like armor rather than fashion. Their eyes met across the room, and Lucia saw recognition there, not of her person, but her purpose. They were mirrors in some way, daughters carrying fathers' legacies into rooms where that history mattered more than anyone would admit. Ms. Chen Vega, Zhang Wei said warmly, extending his hand. Or should I say, Director Chen Vega. Your father would be so proud. Mr. Zhang, she replied in Mandarin, her accent perfect. The honor is mine. Your partnership offer is generous, though I think we both know it needs refinement. His eyebrows rose slightly, not at her fluency, which he expected, but at her immediate pivot to business. Americans usually prefer small talk first. But we're not typical Americans or typical Chinese. Lucia replied, switching to English for the benefit of the room. We're translators building bridges between worlds. Small talk is for people who need to find common ground. We already stand on it. Victor entered, then followed by his senior team, and the full dance of corporate diplomacy began. Introductions. Seat-taking, the careful choreography of power displaying itself while pretending to be humble. Before we begin, Zhang Wei said, producing an envelope from his jacket. There is old business to address. He handed the envelope to Lucia. Inside was a check for $200,000 made out to her personally. This represents the percentage your father should have received from the original Hangtech deal, Zhang explained. With interest. The room went silent. Lucia stared at the check, her mind racing. To accept would acknowledge her father's role, honor his memory. But it would also potentially compromise her position, make her seem like she could be bought. This is generous, Mr. Zhang, but unnecessary, she said carefully, placing the check on the table between them. My father made his choice. He valued relationship over revenue. I won't dishonor that by accepting delayed payment. But you'll accept delayed recognition. Mei Lin spoke for the first time, her English accent, free and crisp. Isn't your position here a form of compensation for years of being overlooked? The challenge in her voice was unmistakable. Lucia met her gaze steadily. My position here is earned, not given, just as your position at Hangtech is earned, despite the convenience of sharing your father's surname. A slight smile played at Mei Lin's lips. Fair point. Should we discuss the actual partnership then, or continue this dance of declined offers and polite insults? Mei Lin, her father warned softly. No, she's right, Lucia said, pulling out her laptop. Let's discuss the real terms, starting with Section 7.8, the Workforce Restructuring Clause. For the next 3 hours, they dissected the agreement line by line. Lucia had prepared for this, but Mei Lin's mind was formidable. Every point Lucia raised was met with a counterpoint, every concern addressed with a clever alternative. It was like playing three-dimensional chess with someone who could see 4 moves ahead. The workforce restructuring became a training exchange program. The intellectual property concerns were addressed with shared patents. The arbitration location became a rotating schedule. Singapore, San Francisco. Singapore, San Francisco. Your Mandarin is flawless, Mei Lin said during a break as they stood by the coffee service. But your classical references are dated. You learned from someone of my father's generation. My father's teaching, Lucia confirmed. Though I notice your English has American patterns, but British formal structures. Boarding school in England, university in America. Harrow, then Harvard. You, public school in Queens, then Columbia. Different paths, same destination. Mei Lin poured tea with practiced grace. You were the invisible one, the maid who spoke languages in silence. How did you... My father had you investigated the moment your translation arrived. He wanted to know who had truly understood not just our words, but our intentions. She handed Lucia the tea. 3 years of voluntary invisibility. That requires strength most people don't have. Or desperation most people can't imagine. Perhaps. But desperation without intelligence leads to begging. You chose strategy instead. Mei Lin glanced at the conference table where their fathers were engaged in animated discussion. They're recreating the past. We should be creating the future. What did you have in mind? A side agreement. Not between companies, but between us, the next generation of bridge builders. Lucia studied her carefully. What kind of agreement? Information sharing. Cultural consulting. making sure our father's companies don't stumble over cultural misunderstandings that we could prevent. Mei Lin pulled out her phone, showing Lucia a secure messaging app. Private channel off the official record. When Reeves Technologies is about to make a mistake in China, I warn you. When Hang Tech misreads American intentions, you warn me. That's borderline corporate espionage. That's preventing corporate stupidity. There's a difference. Before Lucia could respond, Victor called them back to the table. The final terms were close to agreement, but one sticking point remained: the technology transfer provisions. We need guaranteed access to your AI chip architecture, Jiang Wei stated. Not the proprietary elements, but the foundational structure. That's essentially our entire competitive advantage, Victor countered. The room tensed, the deal hanging in balance. Lucia saw the impasse forming, recognized it from her father's stories, the moment when cultural pride prevented practical solutions. May I suggest a modification? She said, her voice cutting through the tension. Instead of technology transfer, we create a joint innovation lab. Shared space, shared resources, shared discoveries. Neither side loses their secrets, both sides gain new knowledge. Located where? Mei Lin asked immediately. Rotating. 6 months in San Jose, 6 months in Shenzhen. Teams from both companies working on next-generation solutions, neither could develop alone. Jiang Wei and Victor exchanged glances, conducting one of those silent conversations that powerful men perfect over decades of negotiation. It has merit, Zhang admitted. It needs structure, Victor added. Then we structure it, Lucia said, pulling up a fresh document on her laptop. I can draft the framework now, have legal review it by tomorrow. I'll assist, Mei Lin said, moving her chair next to Lucia's. 2 perspectives, 1 document. For the next hour, they wrote together their styles, merging Lucia's precision with Mei Lin's innovation, creating something neither could have produced alone. The room watched in fascination as 2 young women reshaped a deal that had been months in the making. This is the future, Jiang Wei said quietly to Victor. Our generation built walls. Theirs builds bridges. Expensive bridges, Victor replied, but he was smiling. By lunch, they had an agreement in principle. The formal signing would happen later, after lawyers had their say, but the deal was essentially done. Hang Tech and Reeves Technologies would partner not just in manufacturing, but in innovation, creating something new, rather than simply dividing something existing. As the Hang Tech team prepared to leave, Jiang Wei approached Lucia privately. Your father would be proud, but not surprised. He always said you would surpass him. He pressed a small object into her hand, a jade seal, ancient and precious. This belonged to your grandfather in China. Your father gave it to me for safekeeping when he got sick, said to return it when you were ready. You're ready. After they left, Victor called Lucia into his office. That was masterful, he said simply. You didn't just translate language, you translated intention, culture, possibility. It's what I've been doing for 3 years. The only difference is, now you can see it. About that, the Hidden Talent Initiative. I want you to run it alongside your other duties. That's a significant addition to my role. With a significant addition to your compensation. Another $50,000 annually, plus bonuses based on talent we successfully develop. Lucia thought about Elena in the cleaning department, Carmen at the diner, James at the security desk. All the invisible people with visible dreams. I'll need autonomy, the ability to promote from within without going through traditional channels. Done? And budget, real money for education, training, development. How much? $5 million the first year. Victor didn't even blink. If you can show ROI, you'll get it. As she left his office, Lucia felt the weight of the jade seal in her pocket alongside her father's pen. 2 generations of bridge builders, each finding their way across different waters. She took the elevator down, not to the basement, but to the 10th floor where the accounting department worked. Susan from accounting, One of Derek's victims was at her desk, head down over spreadsheets. Susan. The woman looked up, surprise flickering across her face. Ms. Chen Vega, I heard you were promoted, but I need a forensic analysis of Derek Willis's projects over the past 2 years. Every bonus, every claim of credit, every project he led. Can you do that? Susan's eyes widened. That would prove what he did, how he stole credit. Exactly. And when we prove it, we restore proper credit and compensation to everyone he wronged. Are you interested? Yes. God, yes. But won't that cause problems? Opening old wounds. Sometimes wounds need to be opened to heal properly. Start with the Johnson Project. I have a feeling that's where the pattern began. As she returned to her office, her temporary 2 grand office, Lucia found Mei Lin waiting for her. I thought you left with the others. I told my father I wanted to see more of Reeves Technologies. Really, I wanted to finish our conversation. Mei Lin stood by the window, silhouetted against the afternoon light. The side agreement. Are you in? What you're proposing could get us both fired. What you did as a maid could have gotten you fired. You took that risk for 3 years. This is actually safer. We're too valuable to fire now. Lucia joined her at the window, looking down at the city. My father used to say that trust was the only currency that mattered in international business. Mine says the same. But trust isn't given, it's built. One careful stone at a time. Or one careful message at a time. Mei Lin smiled. Exactly. She held out her hand. Partners. Lucia shook it, feeling the weight of another bridge forming. Partners. After Mei Lin left, Lucia sat at her desk, overwhelmed by the velocity of change. 4 days ago, she'd been invisible, cleaning these offices, desperate for money to save her mother. Now she was director of international communications, managing multi-million-dollar partnerships, building programs to elevate the invisible, creating secret alliances with the daughters of billionaires. Her phone rang. Dr. Patterson. Your mother is asking for you. Nothing wrong, he added quickly. She just took her first independent steps and wants to share the victory. I'll be right there. As she gathered her things, she noticed someone had left a note on her desk. Handwritten, no signature. We see you now. Don't forget to see us. The Invisible. She folded the note carefully, placing it in her pocket with the jade seal and her father's pen. 3 talismans, each representing a different truth, where she came from, where she was, and where she was going. The hospital felt different now that she entered through the main entrance, rather than sneaking in during off hours. The same building, the same sterile smell, but her changed status somehow altered even this space. The reception desk clerk called her ma'am without prompting. The elevator seemed to arrive faster. Even the hallway to her mother's room felt shorter. She found Maria actually standing beside her bed, holding onto a walker but vertical, triumphant. Look at me, mija, her mother said, tears streaming down her face. I'm standing on my own. We both are, mama. We both are. As she helped her mother take careful steps around the room, Lucia thought about bridges again. Not just the ones between cultures or companies, but the ones between past and present, between invisible and visible, between who we are forced to be and who we choose to become. Tomorrow, she would return to Reeves Technologies and continue the delicate work of transformation, her own, the company's, the invisible workforces. She would navigate the careful alliance with Mei Lin, manage Victor's expectations, and begin the systematic restoration of credit to those Derek had wronged. But tonight, she was simply a daughter, watching her mother learn to walk again, both of them stepping forward into an uncertain but hopeful future. The jade seal pressed against her leg through her pocket, a reminder that some bridges once built span generations. Her father had started the journey teaching her languages and dignity in equal measure. Now it was her turn to complete what he'd begun, to build bridges wide enough for others to cross. Outside the hospital window, New York glittered in the gathering dusk, a city of 8 million souls, most of them invisible to each other. But invisibility, Lucia had learned, was not the same as absence. Sometimes the most powerful people in any room were the ones nobody noticed, the ones who listened instead of spoke, who observed instead of performed. She'd been invisible for 3 years. Now she would use that superpower to make others visible, to build bridges where there had been walls, to translate not just languages, but lives. The invisible maid had become the visible executive. But more importantly, Lucia Vega had become herself fully, finally, and without apology. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of revelations and reversals. Susan from accounting had uncovered what she called a masterpiece of manipulation in Derek's records, 17 projects over 2 years, where he'd claimed sole credit for collaborative work, resulting in over $300,000 in bonuses that should have been shared. The evidence was meticulous, undeniable, and currently spread across Lucia's desk like a roadmap of corporate theft. "This one's the worst," Susan said, pointing to a product launch proposal that had earned Derek a $50,000 bonus. "Jennifer from marketing wrote 90% of it. I have the digital timestamps, the email threads, even the original drafts in her handwriting. He just reformatted it and put his name on top." Lucia studied the documents, her anger controlled, but burning steady. "Can you reach Jennifer? She's working at a nonprofit in Brooklyn now. Took a 60% pay cut just to get away from him. Call her. Tell her we're making things right." As Susan left, Patricia entered with a different kind of problem written across her face. "We have a situation," she announced. "Derek's filed a wrongful termination lawsuit. He's claiming he was set up, that someone sabotaged his translation to get him fired." Lucia felt a cold flutter in her stomach, but kept her expression neutral. "On what grounds?" "He says someone accessed his laptop without authorization and sent the correct translation in his name to humiliate him. His lawyer is demanding access to security footage and computer logs." "Good luck with that. The cameras were down for maintenance, and IT purges logs after 72 hours unless there's a reported breach." Patricia studied her carefully. "You knew that when you did it." It wasn't a question, but Lucia didn't confirm or deny. Derek's incompetence was real. His theft of credit was real. Whether someone helped expose that or not doesn't change the facts. "Victor wants to see you. He's with legal." The walk to Victor's office felt longer than usual, each step carrying the weight of potential exposure. But when she entered, she found Victor laughing. Actually laughing while reading something on his phone. Lucia, perfect timing. Derek's lawyer just sent over their evidence. Apparently, Derek's proof that he was sabotaged is that the translation was too good to be his work. The legal team head, Marcus Thompson, shook his head in amazement. He's literally arguing that he couldn't have written something that competent. Therefore, someone must have framed him by making him look capable. "It's the worst legal strategy I've ever seen," Victor added. "He's essentially confessing to incompetence to prove conspiracy." Lucia relaxed slightly. "What's our response?" "We're countersuing," Marcus said. "Susan's audit revealed extensive bonus fraud. We're seeking recovery of all misappropriated funds plus damages." "Make sure the people he stole credit from are named in the suit," Lucia said. "They deserve recognition even in legal documents." After the meeting, Lucia returned to find someone unexpected in her office. Elena Martinez, the head of cleaning services, sitting nervously in one of the leather chairs. "Elena, is everything okay?" "I need to tell you something," Elena said, wringing her hands. "About Derek." Lucia closed the door and sat across from her. "What about him?" "He came to the building last night. Tom at the security desk called me because Derek was trying to convince him to let him in after hours. Said he left something important in his office." "Tom didn't let him in, did he?" "No, but Derek said something strange. He said, 'That maid knows more than she's telling. Lucia something. Check her background. Check her father.'" Lucia's blood chilled. "He's trying to shift blame." "There's more," Elena continued. "He offered Tom $5,000 to pull up old security footage, specifically from the service areas. Tom refused, but Derek might try others. Let him try. There's nothing to find. Elena stood to leave, then paused. The others, the cleaning staff, were proud of you. But we're also worried. When someone rises, others try to pull them down. That's why we rise together, Lucia replied. No one gets left behind. That afternoon, the Hidden Talent Initiative held its first meeting. Lucia had expected maybe a dozen people. Instead, 47 employees crowded into the conference room. Janitors, security guards, cafeteria workers, mailroom staff. Each face carried a mixture of hope and skepticism, dreams deferred but not destroyed. Let me start with a story, Lucia began, standing before them without notes or PowerPoint slides. 3 weeks ago, I was cleaning this very room. I heard executives laughing about how no one in the company could translate a simple document. The irony was painful. I could have translated it in my sleep. But I was invisible, and invisible people don't speak unless spoken to. A murmur of recognition rippled through the room. How many of you have degrees? She asked. 23 hands rose. Advanced degrees? 7 hands remained up. Speak more than one language fluently. 31 hands. Have skills your supervisors don't know about. Every single hand rose. This is why we're here. Lucia continued. Not for charity, not for quotas, but because Reeves Technologies has been operating at half capacity. We've been ignoring half our talent because it comes in the wrong uniform. James, the security guard from the basement, raised his hand. What exactly are you offering? Skills assessment first. We identify what you can do versus what you're currently doing. Then we create development plans, education support, mentorship, gradual transition into roles that match your capabilities. The budget is $5 million this year. What's the catch? Someone called out. No catch, but there are requirements. You have to commit to the program, maintain your current duties during transition, and help identify others with hidden potential. Carmen from the diner stood up. I have a paralegal certificate, but can't afford law school. Could this program help? We're partnering with Columbia Law for night classes. Full tuition coverage if you maintain a B average and commit to 3 years with the company after graduation. The room erupted in conversation, excited, hopeful, but still cautious. These were people who'd been disappointed before, who'd learned that promises from executives were often worth less than the paper they weren't written on. I need to be transparent, Lucia added, raising her voice slightly. This program will have enemies. People who benefit from the current system won't want it to change. You might face resentment, sabotage, even threats to your job security. I can't promise it will be easy. I can only promise I'll fight for you the way someone should have fought for me 3 years ago. After the meeting, Lucia found Mei Lin's first message waiting on the secure app. Hang Tech Board concerned about Reeves employee lawsuit. Need reassurance deal won't be affected by internal instability. Lucia responded quickly. Lawsuit is nuisance filing from terminated employee. Actually strengthens our position by removing obstruction to progress. We'll send details through official channels. Mei Lin's reply was almost instant. Understood. Also, my father was impressed by your hidden talent program. Considering something similar for our American offices. Perhaps we could collaborate. Before Lucia could respond, her phone rang. Her mother. Mija, you need to come to the hospital. What's wrong? Are you okay? I'm fine, but there's a man here asking questions about Papa. He says he's a reporter. Lucia was out of her chair before her mother finished the sentence. Don't tell him anything. I'm on my way. The ride to the hospital was torture, every red light an eternity. A reporter asking about her father could only mean Derek was escalating, trying to find leverage by exposing her background. She found the man in the hospital lobby, young, hungry-looking, the kind of journalist who'd sell his soul for a front-page byline. You're asking about David Chen, she said, approaching him directly. His eyes lit up with recognition. You're Lucia, the invisible maid who became an executive. I'm the director of international communications. What do you want? Just the truth. Derek Willis says you manipulated the system, used your father's connections to steal his job. He says David Chen had secret dealings with Chinese companies that his daughter is now leveraging. My father is dead, Lucia said flatly. He died of cancer, broke and forgotten, after spending his life helping companies like Reeves Technologies navigate international waters. If you want to drag his name through the mud for Derek Willis's vendetta, you better have more than insinuations. The reporter pulled out a recorder. On the record. Everything I just said is on the record. And here's something else. Derek Willis stole credit from 17 employees over 2 years. We have documented proof. If you want a real story, investigate that. Can you provide evidence? Legal will send you what's public record. The rest will come out in court. The reporter studied her for a moment. You really were a maid. For 3 years. I was a woman doing what she had to do to survive. Now, I'm a woman doing what she has to do to thrive, and helping others do the same. That's a nice soundbite. It's also the truth. Derek Willis represents everything wrong with corporate culture: theft of credit, manipulation of systems, stepping on others to climb higher. I represent the correction. Choose which story you want to tell. She left him there knowing she'd taken a risk by engaging, but hiding would only fuel speculation, and she'd spent enough time being invisible. Back in her mother's room, Maria was sitting up, color returning to her cheeks day by day. What did he want? Maria asked. To turn our story into Derek's weapon, but I won't let him. You look tired, mija. I am tired. But Papa used to say, fatigue is just fear leaving the body, Maria finished. He said that every night when he came home from 18-hour translation sessions. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Maria spoke again. There's something I never told you about why Papa turned down Zhang Wei's partnership offer all those years ago. Lucia turned surprised. What partnership offer? Zhang wanted Papa to move to China to head Hangtech's international division. The money would have been incredible, millions over time. But Papa refused. Why? Because of you. He wanted you to grow up American with American opportunities. He thought that was the better bridge to build a daughter who could stand in both worlds but belong fully to one. The revelation hit Lucia like a physical weight. Another sacrifice she'd never known about, another price paid for her possibilities. Her phone buzzed with a message from Victor. Board wants to meet you. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. They're nervous about the lawsuit and the hidden talent budget. Be ready to defend both. She showed the message to her mother, who laughed, actually laughed. What's funny? You spent 3 years afraid of being seen. Now everyone wants to look at you and they might not like what they see. Are you saying I should be worried? No, mija. I'm saying you should be yourself. The woman who cleaned toilets and translated contracts. The daughter who sold everything to save her mother. The executive who remembers being invisible. That's who they need to see. The next morning, Lucia arrived at Reeves Technologies to find a crowd of employees in the lobby. For a moment, she thought something terrible had happened. Then she saw the banner, "Thank you, Lucia Vega, the formerly invisible." Tom from security stepped forward. We wanted you to know we see you seeing us. It was grammatically awkward, but emotionally perfect. Lucia felt tears threatening, but held them back. Executives didn't cry in lobbies. But then again, executives didn't usually rise from cleaning staffs either. This is just the beginning, she managed to say. Every single one of you has something this company needs. We're going to find it, develop it, and celebrate it. In the elevator, Patricia was waiting with a tablet full of problems. The board is concerned, she said without preamble. $5 million for hidden talent seems excessive to them, and Derek's lawsuit is making investors nervous. The board consists of 12 members, right? Yes. How many of them started in entry-level positions? Patricia thought for a moment. Maybe 2. And how many inherited their positions or bought their way in? Lucia, you can't approach the board that way. I'm not going to attack them. I'm going to educate them. There's a difference. The morning flew by in preparation. Susan delivered more evidence of Derek's theft. Legal confirmed the countersuit was moving forward. The Hidden Talent Initiative had received over 200 applications in just 24 hours. Then, unexpectedly, Mei Lin called on the secure line. "We have a problem," she said without greeting. "Someone's been shopping information about your father to Chinese media. Claims he was a corporate spy selling American secrets." Lucia's hand tightened on the phone. "Derek. Probably. But it gets worse. They're connecting it to our partnership, suggesting the whole thing is some kind of long-term espionage operation." That's insane. Insane sells newspapers. My father is handling the Chinese side, but you need to control the American narrative. I'm meeting with the board in an hour. Then you better be ready to fight. These kinds of rumors can kill deals, destroy careers. I've seen it happen. After hanging up, Lucia sat in her temporary office, staring at her father's jade pen. David Chen had been many things: translator teacher, father sacrifice, but never a spy. The accusation was so absurd, it would be laughable if it weren't so dangerous. She picked up her phone and did something she hadn't planned. She called Jiang Wei directly. "Lucia," he answered immediately. "I heard about the rumors." "Are you concerned?" "No. I knew your father. But others didn't. They'll believe what they want to believe, unless we give them something better to believe." "What do you suggest?" "The truth, but strategically delivered. Your board meeting, may I attend?" "You want to come to my board meeting?" "I want to stand beside David Chen's daughter and tell American executives that integrity translates across all languages. Will they listen?" "They'll have to. You represent $200 million. "Then I'll see you in an hour." Lucia hung up, then walked to the mirror in her office. She saw a woman in a designer suit, not expensive but well chosen. She saw her father's eyes and her mother's determination. She saw 3 years of invisibility that had taught her to see everything, and 3 weeks of visibility that had taught her to show only what mattered. The boardroom was on the 43rd floor, one level above the executive offices, because even among the powerful there were hierarchies. The 12 board members were already seated when she arrived, their faces ranging from curious to skeptical to openly hostile. Ms. Chen Vega, the board chairman William Hartley, began without preamble. "We have concerns." "I'm sure you do," Lucia replied, taking her seat with deliberate calm. Change is always concerning to those comfortable with the status quo. A ripple of surprise crossed several faces. They'd expected deference, perhaps even apology. Instead, she was offering challenge. "The Hidden Talent Initiative," Hartley began, "will generate a 300% ROI within 18 months. Lucia interrupted. "I have the projections here based on similar programs at Microsoft and Google. Would you like to see them? The budget seems insufficient, actually, but I'm willing to start small and prove the concept." Robert Sterling, an older board member, with old money written in every line of his face, leaned forward. "You're rather confident for someone who was cleaning our offices a month ago." "I'm rather confident because I was cleaning your offices a month ago," Lucia corrected. "I've seen this company from bottom to top. I know where we're wasting resources, missing opportunities, and hemorrhaging talent. Do you?" Before Sterling could respond, the door opened, and Jiang Wei entered, followed by Victor. Mr. Jiang requested to address the board. Victor explained, though his expression suggested he was as surprised as everyone else. Jiang Wei stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding immediate attention. "I understand there are concerns about Lucia Chen Vega, about her father, about our partnership. Let me be clear. David Chen was the most honest man I ever worked with. He could have been wealthy, but he chose integrity. His daughter has inherited that integrity along with brilliance you've been too blind to see." He pulled out a folder distributing copies around the table. "This is what Lucia's translation saved you from every trap in our original proposal, every advantage we would have gained if Derek Willis's version had been submitted. She didn't just translate words. She protected your interests while respecting ours. That's not espionage. That's excellence. Hartley reviewed the document, his expression shifting from skeptical to surprised. These provisions would have cost us millions. Tens of millions, Zhang Wei corrected. But Lucia caught them all. A maid with a mop saw what your executives missed. What does that tell you about your talent evaluation? The room was silent for a long moment. Then Sterling spoke again, his tone different now, thoughtful, rather than dismissive. The Hidden Talent Initiative. How would it actually work? Lucia stood moving to the presentation screen with the confidence of someone who'd been preparing for this moment her entire life. Phase 1 Assessment. We identify hidden skills among current staff. Phase 2 Development. We provide education and training to bridge gaps. Phase 3 Integration. We promote from within based on capability, not connections. And if people aren't interested, Hartley asked, then they continue in their current roles. This isn't forced advancement, it's offered opportunity. The lawsuit, another board member interjected. Derek Willis is suing because he was exposed, Lucia said flatly. His incompetence cost you nearly $200 million. Shit. His credit theft cost 17 employees their rightful recognition and compensation. He's not a victim. He's a cautionary tale. You seem to have all the answers, Sterling observed. No, Lucia admitted. But I have better questions. Instead of asking who has the right degree, we should ask who has the right capabilities. Instead of who looks the part, we should ask who can play the part. Instead of who do we know, we should ask who should we know. Zhang Wei smiled. This is why HangTech is partnering with Reeves Technologies. Not for your technology, though it's impressive. But for this, the recognition that talent doesn't always arrive in expected packages. The board continued debating for another hour, but the tide had turned. Zhang Wei's support carried weight that Lucia's arguments alone couldn't have achieved. When the vote came, it was 9-3 in favor of the Hidden Talent Initiative, with full funding approved. As the meeting ended, Hartley approached Lucia privately. Your father, David Chen, he translated the Hartley-Morrison merger in 2016. I didn't know that. He saved us from a catastrophic error in the Chinese subsidiary terms, never sent a bill for the extra work, said getting it right was payment enough. That sounds like him. You sound like him too, but louder. Hartley smiled slightly. That's probably a good thing. The quiet ones don't always get heard in time. After everyone left, Lucia stood alone in the boardroom, looking out at the city sprawling below. 3 weeks ago, she'd been invisible in these towers of power. Now she was reshaping them from the inside, one bridge at a time. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Walking without the walker now. Small steps but my own. Lucia smiled, texting back. Same here, Mama. Same here. That evening, she worked late preparing implementation plans for the Hidden Talent Initiative. The 43rd floor was quiet, most executives having fled to their suburban homes or Manhattan penthouses. But the building itself was never silent, somewhere invisible. People were cleaning, securing, maintaining the infrastructure that would gleam fresh for tomorrow's visible workforce. Around 9 o'clock, Elena appeared with a cleaning cart, though Lucia suspected this visit wasn't about emptying trash cans. The staff wants to know something, Elena said directly. When you're fully successful, when you're running this company, or another, will you remember us? I'll remember being you, Lucia replied. That's different from remembering you exist. It means I can't forget, even if I wanted to. Elena nodded, satisfied. Derek Willis, he forgot the moment he got his first promotion, started looking through people instead of at them. Where is he now, do you know? Tom heard he's been drinking at expensive bars, telling anyone who'll listen how he was betrayed by the cleaning lady. Elena's smile was sharp. The cleaning lady who speaks 4 languages and saved a $200 million deal. 5 languages, actually. I learned Korean last year. Seemed useful. From books. From YouTube and Korean dramas. Amazing what you can learn when people think you're just playing on your phone during breaks. They both laughed, the sound echoing through the empty executive floor. As Elena left, she paused at the door. Your father would be proud. But more importantly, you should be proud. You didn't just rise, you're pulling others up with you. Alone again, Lucia returned to her desk, where Susan had left the final tally of Derek's theft. $347,000 in misappropriated bonuses over 26 months, affecting 19 employees across 7 departments. She drafted an email to legal, proceed with full recovery efforts. Every dollar returned should go to the people who earned it with interest. Then she opened the secure app to find another message from Mei Lin. Chinese media backing off the spy story. My father made some calls, but watch for American outlets picking it up. Derek's getting desperate. Lucia responded, let him. Desperate people make mistakes. As if on cue, her phone rang. Unknown number. Lucia Vega. The voice was slurred, angry. Derek. Derek, calling to confess. Calling to warn you. I know what you did. I know you set me up. You set yourself up the moment you claimed credit for work you couldn't do. I'll prove it. I'll find the security footage, the computer logs something. Good luck with that, but Derek. Even if you could prove someone exposed your incompetence, it doesn't change the fact that you were incompetent. I made that department what it was. No, the people you stole from made that department. You just wore their success like a borrowed suit. You were nothing. A maid. A nobody. You served me coffee. I did. And while I served you coffee, I watched you steal Jennifer's proposals, Susan's analysis, Marcus's strategies. I saw everything, Derek. That's what invisible people do. We see what you think we're too insignificant to notice. There was silence on the line, then a bitter laugh. You think you've won. But people like me, we don't stay down. We have connections, influence. You had connections. Past tense. Check LinkedIn. 17 of your former colleagues have posted about how you stole their work. Your reputation is done, Derek. Not because I destroyed it, but because I revealed it. She hung up before he could respond, then immediately called building security to alert them about the drunk threatening call. The rest of the week passed in a whirlwind of implementation. The Hidden Talent Initiative launched officially, with assessments beginning for the first cohort of 50 participants. The partnership with Hang Tech moved forward with the innovation lab locations selected and preliminary staffing begun. And throughout it all, Derek's lawsuit crumbled as more evidence of his theft emerged. By Friday, Lucia was exhausted but exhilarated. She stood in her converted supply closet office, finally complete, and smiled at the transformation. Where cleaning supplies had once been stored, now stood a functional workspace. But she'd kept one shelf of the original supplies displayed like art, a reminder of where she'd come from. Patricia knocked and entered, tablet in hand as always. The reporter from the hospital published his story. Lucia's stomach tensed. And Patricia handed her the tablet. The headline read, "From Mop to Merger, How a Hidden Genius Saved a $200 million Deal." The story was better than she'd hoped, factual, focusing on the Hidden Talent Initiative and the systemic issues it addressed rather than personal drama. Derek was mentioned only briefly as an example of what happens when incompetence is protected by privilege. "There's more," Patricia said. "Jennifer from marketing called. She wants to return to Reeves Technologies, but only if she reports directly to you. Tell her yes. We need people who understand what it's like to be erased." And Susan from accounting has identified 12 more cases of credit theft, not just from Derek, but from multiple executives over the years. Then we have more work to do. As Patricia left, Lucia's phone rang. Her mother. "Mija, I'm being discharged tomorrow. The doctors say the recovery is remarkable." "I'll be there to pick you up." "No, I want to take a taxi. I want to come home on my own power the way you walked into that building on yours." Lucia understood. Independence after dependence was a victory that needed to be claimed personally. That night she worked late again, but this time she wasn't alone. Throughout the building, participants in the Hidden Talent Initiative were attending their first classes. English as a second language, business communication, financial analysis, coding. The invisible workforce was becoming visible, one skill at a time. As she finally prepared to leave, she found Zhang Wei waiting in the lobby. "Working late?" he asked. "Building bridges takes time." "Your father said the same thing. He also said bridges weren't just about connection, but about choice, the choice to cross to stay or to build new ones entirely." "What choice are you making?" "I'm choosing to believe that what you're building here will outlast both of us. The partnership between our companies is just paperwork. The partnership between our cultures through programs like yours, that's permanence." He handed her an envelope. "This isn't charity or delayed payment. It's an investment. $5 million for the Hidden Talent Initiative from my personal funds. Consider it a bet on the future your father envisioned." Lucia stared at the check. "This is too much." "This is exactly enough. Your program will succeed here, then spread. Other companies will copy it. In 10 years, invisible talent won't exist because everyone will be looking for it. Or in 10 years, people like Derek will find new ways to steal credit and suppress talent. Perhaps. But now there will be people like you to stop them." As Zhang Wei's car pulled away, Lucia stood on the sidewalk, where just weeks ago, she'd exited through the service door for the last time. Now she walked through the main entrance, nodded to by security, acknowledged by name. But she didn't forget the service door. She never would. It was part of her story, part of her strength. She'd been invisible not because she lacked value, but because the world lacked vision. Now she was teaching the world to see. 6 months later, the 42nd floor of Reeves Technologies hummed with a different energy. The Hidden Talent Initiative had placed 7 former service staff members into junior executive positions, with 12 more in advanced training. Lucia stood in the conference room where it had all begun, watching Jennifer from marketing present, a revolutionary campaign strategy to the board, the same Jennifer who Derek had driven out now returned, and thriving under Lucia's mentorship. The Asian market expansion is exceeding projections by 40%. Jennifer concluded, her confidence unmarred by the years of stolen credit. Thanks to Director Chen Vega's cultural bridge building, we're not just selling to these markets, we're partnering with them. As the board applauded, Lucia caught William Hartley's eye. The chairman, who'd once been skeptical, now regularly cited the Hidden Talent Initiative as proof of Reeves Technologies' innovative leadership. The $5 million from Zhang Wei, combined with the company's funding, had created a program that Harvard Business School was now studying as a model for corporate transformation. After the meeting, Victor pulled Lucia aside. "We need to talk about your future. If this is about Derek's latest appeal—" "Derek's in jail," Victor interrupted. "Didn't you hear he was arrested this morning for corporate fraud? Turns out he wasn't just stealing credit, he was selling proprietary information to competitors." Lucia felt no satisfaction, only a weary recognition of how desperation could corrupt ambition. "Who caught him?" "Susan from accounting, actually. She noticed irregularities in his old expense reports that matched timing with our competitors' product launches. She's quite the detective." "She's more than that. I want her promoted to senior forensic analyst." "Done. But that's not what I wanted to discuss." Victor led her to his office, closing the door with unusual ceremony. "I'm stepping down as CEO." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Lucia sank into a chair, genuinely shocked. "Why?" "Because I've built what I wanted to build. The company is successful, profitable, respected. But you've shown me what I missed, the human infrastructure that makes everything else possible. I'm better at building companies than rebuilding cultures. That needs someone else." "Who?" "The board wants Victoria. She has the experience, the relationships, the strategic vision. He paused. But she wants you as her chief operating officer. Lucia's breath caught. COO Victor, I've been an executive for 6 months. You've been preparing for this for 3 years. Every floor you cleaned, every conversation you overheard, every invisible moment you spent observing, that was your real training. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A message from Mei Lin. Urgent. Call immediately. I need to take this, Lucia said, stepping into the hallway. Lucia. Mei Lin's voice was tense. We have a problem. Someone leaked the Innovation Lab's preliminary designs. Chinese media is calling it American technological imperialism. That doesn't sound like natural media response. Someone's feeding them that narrative. My thoughts exactly. But who benefits from destroying our partnership? Lucia's mind raced through possibilities, then stopped on an unwelcome thought. Send me the articles. I want to see the specific language they're using. The articles arrived within minutes, and Lucia recognized the rhetorical patterns immediately. She'd seen them before in Derek's emails, his reports, his presentations. But Derek was in jail. She called Susan. I need you to check something. Derek's arrest. Who was his lawyer? Mitchell Barnes from Barnes & Associates. Why? And who else does Barnes represent? Susan typed rapidly. Oh my God. Barnes represents Xiong Corporation, Hangtech's biggest competitor. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Derek hadn't been working alone. He'd been feeding information to Xiong, and now they were trying to sabotage the Hangtech partnership to eliminate competition. Susan, can you trace the fraud money where Derek was sending it? Already on it. Give me an hour. Lucia returned to Victor's office. We have a situation. The partnership is under attack, and it's bigger than Derek. She explained quickly, watching Victor's expression darken with each revelation. If Xiong is behind this, they're playing a dangerous game, he said. They're trying to destroy both us and Hangtech. Unless we expose them first. That's corporate war, Lucia. Are you prepared for that? She thought of her father dying broken and forgotten despite his brilliance. Of her mother nearly lost to a tumor that poverty made untreatable. Of all the invisible people still waiting for their chance to be seen. I've been at war my whole life, she said quietly. The only difference is, now I have weapons. The next 72 hours were a masterclass in strategic combat. Working with Mei Lin from the Chinese side and Susan from the American, Lucia assembled a dossier that exposed Xiong's corporate espionage network. They'd been using Derek and 3 other disgruntled employees across different companies to steal and sabotage. The press conference was scheduled for Thursday morning. But Wednesday night, Lucia received an unexpected visitor. Mitchell Barnes stood in her office doorway, his $1,000 suit unable to hide the desperation in his eyes. Ms. Chen Vega, we need to discuss a resolution. There's nothing to discuss. Your clients committed corporate espionage. The evidence goes public tomorrow. My clients are prepared to offer compensation. $50 million to Reeves Technologies, $50 million to Hangtech. The partnerships remain intact, the crimes remain private. And Derek? Derek acted alone. He'll serve his time. Lucia stood moving to her window. Below, the night cleaning crew was arriving. Invisible people beginning their invisible work. You know what I was doing 18 months ago, Mr. Barnes? I'm aware of your background. I was cleaning the bathroom in this building's lobby, on my knees scrubbing toilets while executives like your clients walked past without seeing me. Not because I lacked ability, but because the system is designed to keep certain people invisible. She turned to face him. Your clients aren't just thieves. They're the architects of that system. They profit from suppression, from theft, from making sure talent stays hidden unless it serves them. Everyone profits from something, Ms. Chen Vega, even you. Yes, but I profit by lifting others. Your clients profit by stepping on them. That's the difference that matters. Barnes straightened his tie, a nervous gesture. If you go public, Xiong will retaliate. They have resources, connections. They have money. We have truth. In my experience, truth travels faster. This is a mistake. No, Mr. Barnes. The mistake was thinking invisible people stay invisible forever. After he left, Lucia called her mother, who was now fully recovered and volunteering at the hospital that had saved her life. Mija, you sound tired. I'm about to destroy a company tomorrow. No, you're about to reveal what a company really is. There's a difference. What if Barnes is right? What if they retaliate? Then you fight back. You've been fighting your whole life for education, despite poverty, for dignity, despite invisibility, for my life despite impossible odds. This is just another fight. This one's public. Everyone will be watching. Good. Let them see what we've always known, that Lucia Vega doesn't just survive. She triumphs. The press conference was held in the Reeves Technologies auditorium. Lucia had insisted on one unusual addition to the typical setup. The entire Hidden Talent Initiative cohort sat in the front rows, their faces visible to every camera. Ladies and gentlemen, Lucia began, her father's jade pen in her pocket like a talisman. 6 months ago, I was invisible in this building, not unseen, invisible. There's a difference. Unseen means people don't notice you. Invisible means people choose not to see you, even when you're right in front of them. She clicked to the first slide showing Derek's mugshot alongside Mitchell Barnes and 3 Xiong Corporation executives. This is what happens when invisible people become visible, those who profit from invisibility panic. They steal, they sabotage, they destroy, rather than compete fairly. For the next 30 minutes, she laid out the evidence with surgical precision. Financial records, email trails, recorded conversations that Susan had uncovered. Xiong's stock price plummeted in real time as she spoke. But the masterful moment came when she introduced the 7 former service staff members now in executive positions. This is Carmen Rodriguez, formerly a waitress, now our junior legal counsel, currently pursuing her law degree at Columbia. This is James Washington, formerly security, now director of facilities innovation. This is Elena Martinez, formerly head of cleaning services, now vice president of operational excellence. Each stood as introduced their presence a living refutation of the system Xiong represented. Xiong Corporation believed they could destroy our partnership with Hangtech by exploiting prejudices about capability and class. They failed because we've proven that talent exists everywhere, in boardrooms and boiler rooms, in executive suites, and in service corridors. A reporter raised her hand. Ms. Vega, aren't you concerned about legal retaliation from Xiong? I'm concerned about the thousands of brilliant people still trapped in invisible roles because companies like Xiong prefer exploitation to elevation. That concern outweighs any personal risk. What about Derek Willis? Do you see him as a victim of the system too? Lucia paused, choosing her words carefully. Derek had every advantage: education, connections, visibility. He chose to use those advantages to steal from others. The people behind me had no advantages except their own determination. They chose to excel despite the system. That's the difference between perpetrator and victim. As the conference ended, Mei Lin appeared at her shoulder. That was brilliantly orchestrated, she said quietly. Xiong's finished. Their board is already calling emergency meetings. It's not about destroying them. It's about warning others the age of invisible talent is ending. Speaking of which, my father wants to fund hidden talent programs in all Hangtech's American offices. We're stealing your idea. It's not stealing if I help you implement it. They shook hands as cameras clicked. 2 daughters of immigrants building bridges their fathers had only dreamed of. That afternoon, Victoria officially announced her appointment as CEO with Lucia as COO. The board vote was unanimous, even Robert Sterling admitting that the Maid had become indispensable. In her new office, still the converted supply closet, but now with Chief Operating Officer. On the door, Lucia found a gift waiting. It was from Jiang Wei, a framed photo of her father and him from 15 years ago, standing together at a translation conference, both young and hopeful. The note read, "He would be proud, but not surprised. He always said his daughter would build bridges he could only imagine." As weeks turned to months, the Hidden Talent Initiative became the Hidden Talent Movement. Companies across the country began implementing similar programs, desperate not to miss the next Lucia Vega hiding in their service staff. Universities created scholarships specifically for working adults in invisible positions. The phrase invisible talent entered the business lexicon. Derek Willis was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. At his sentencing, he'd stood up and pointed at Lucia in the gallery. "She destroyed me," he'd said. "No," the judge had replied, "you destroyed yourself. She just made it visible." On the 1-year anniversary of the day, Victor Reeves had mockingly offered $27,400 for a translation. Lucia stood before a packed auditorium at Harvard Business School. "A year ago, I was invisible," she began, "not because I lacked value, but because the system couldn't see my worth. Today, I run operations for a $3 billion company. The difference isn't what I learned in that year, it's what the world learned about looking." She clicked to a slide showing the original cleaning staff of Reeves Technologies. Among these 43 people are 12 college graduates, 8 with advanced degrees, 23 who speak multiple languages, and 37 with skills their employers never knew existed. They're invisible, not because they lack capability, but because we lack vision. A student raised his hand. "Ms. Vega, how do we identify invisible talent if by definition it's invisible?" You start by assuming it exists. Every person serving you, coffee, cleaning your office, guarding your building, assume they have talents you can't see. Then create systems to reveal those talents, not charity opportunity. But isn't that expensive? You know what's expensive: letting brilliance mop floors while mediocrity makes millions. That's expensive. After the lecture, she found her mother waiting in the lobby, wearing a new suit, looking healthier than she had in years. "You were magnificent, mija." I was honest. Sometimes that's the same thing. They walked together through Harvard's campus, 2 women who'd nearly been destroyed by circumstances now standing tall in spaces that had once seemed impossibly distant. "Papa would have loved this," Maria said softly. "He's here," Lucia replied, touching the jade pen in her pocket. "Every word I speak, every bridge I build, he's here." That evening at the gala celebrating the Hidden Talent Movement's first year, Lucia stood at the podium looking out at a room that perfectly represented her journey. Service staff mixed freely with executives invisible no more. The Hang Tech delegation sat with the Reeves Technologies Board partnership, strengthened by shared purpose. Even William Hartley was deep in conversation with Elena Martinez about operational innovations. "When I was invisible," Lucia said, the room falling silent, "I thought visibility was the goal. I was wrong. The goal isn't to be seen, it's to help others see. Not just to rise, but to lift. Not just to succeed, but to succeed in a way that makes success possible for others." She raised her glass of water. She never forgot the years when champagne was an impossible luxury. To the invisible becoming visible. To the overlooked becoming essential. To the cleaners becoming CEOs. But most importantly, to a world where no one has to hide their brilliance because they're holding a mop instead of a MBA. The applause was thunderous, but Lucia barely heard it. She was thinking of a young woman somewhere in the city cleaning offices at night while dreaming of bigger things. That woman didn't know it yet, but the doors were opening, the bridges were building. The invisible was becoming visible. 6 months later, Lucia stood in the renovated basement of Reeves Technologies. What had once been a locker room for service staff was now the Hidden Talent Academy, a full educational facility with classrooms, computer labs, and mentorship spaces. The first graduating class, 50 employees who'd completed their initial training, stood in caps and gowns. Not because they'd earned degrees, but because they'd earned visibility. "You are not success stories," Lucia told them. "You are success truths. The difference is that stories can be fiction. Truth is undeniable. Carmen Rodriguez, now a full attorney, would be taking over the legal department. James Washington had patented 3 innovations in building security that were being licensed globally. Elena Martinez had just been offered the COO position at a Fortune 500 company. Remember, Lucia continued, you didn't become valuable today. You were always valuable. Today the world simply caught up to what you've always known. As the ceremony ended, Susan from accounting, now chief financial analyst, approached with a final report on the Derek Willis case. We've recovered all the stolen bonuses. Every penny has been returned to the rightful recipients with interest. And Derek? Model prisoner, apparently. He's teaching literacy to other inmates. Lucia felt an unexpected twinge of something not quite forgiveness, but perhaps understanding. Even Derek can become visible in a different way, I suppose. You're more generous than I would be. No, I just remember that invisibility is a condition, not a character. Derek made himself invisible to ethics, to empathy, to others' worth. Maybe prison is teaching him to see. That evening, Lucia sat in her converted supply closet office, now legendary in business circles as the symbol of transformation. The cleaning supplies still on display had become her most photographed background, appearing in countless articles about the hidden talent movement. Mei Lin called on their secure line, now less secret communication, and more friend checking in. Did you see the news? Xiong Corporation just announced their own hidden talent initiative. Copying us. Trying to rebuild after you destroyed them. My father finds it hilarious they're implementing the very programs they tried to sabotage. Good. The more companies that look for invisible talent, the fewer invisible people remain. Speaking of which, I have someone I want you to meet. She reminds me of you, brilliant, overlooked, currently working in our Shanghai factory. Send her here. We'll make her visible. After the call, Lucia walked through the executive floor, then took the service elevator down through every level. On each floor, she saw evidence of change. Former service staff in professional roles. Executive bathrooms being cleaned by workers wearing Hidden Talent Academy shirts that marked them as students, not just servants. In the lobby, she met Tom, the security guard, who'd first recognized her new badge. He was now wearing a different uniform, head of security operations, a position created specifically to utilize his 20 years of experience and insight. Evening, Ms. Chen Vega. Evening, Tom. How's the new role? Visible, he said with a grin. Beautifully visible. Outside New York sparkled in the darkness, millions of lights representing millions of lives. Somewhere among them were the still invisible, the overlooked, the underestimated. But fewer than yesterday, and tomorrow there would be fewer still. Lucia stood where she'd once exited through the service door, where she'd made the choice between visibility and invisibility, between safety and truth. The service door was still there, but now it bore a plaque. Through this door passed invisible talent. Through these walls they became visible. Her phone rang. Her mother. Mija, are you still at the office? Just leaving. Come to dinner. I made your father's favorite, the one he used to make when we celebrated. What are we celebrating? Everything, Lucia. We're celebrating everything. As she walked toward the subway, she still took the subway. Remembering when it was her only option, Lucia touched her father's jade pen one more time. David Chen had built bridges with words translating between languages and cultures. His daughter had built bridges with action translating between invisible and visible, between potential and power. The invisible maid had become the visible executive. But more importantly, Lucia Chen Vega had become what she was always meant to be, a translator, not just of languages, but of lives, a builder not just of business, but of bridges that others could cross from darkness into light. The hidden talent movement would grow, spreading across industries and nations. Studies would be written, models, developed, systems transformed. But at its heart would always be a simple truth that a maid discovered while cleaning toilets and dreaming of more talent is everywhere waiting to be seen. The only question is, whether we have the vision to look. In the end, $27,400 had bought more than a translation. It had bought a transformation. Not just of Lucia, not just of Reeves Technologies, but of the fundamental assumption that position determines potential. The jade pen glowed green in the city lights, a reminder that some inheritances are more valuable than money. The inheritance of courage, of determination, of the absolute conviction that invisible doesn't mean invaluable. 3 years of invisibility, 6 months of emergence, a lifetime of impact. The story of the invisible maid who saved a company wasn't really about saving a company at all. It was about revealing what had always been there, the extraordinary hidden in the ordinary, the exceptional disguised as the everyday, the truth that every invisible person carries within them the potential to change the world. They just need someone to see them. And now, because of Lucia Vega, the world was finally learning to look.